Tuesday, May 26th meeting of the school committee, and we will stand first to say our Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so we'll start this evening with our consent agenda. So I know there's quite a lot in there this evening. There was some extra information sent out last week, but I got no questions. Or is there any other questions, concerns first about anything on the consent agenda? There was just one thing I wanted to potentially propose that we had gone into the school committee calendar meetings. There was 3 dates. One, I kind of wanted us to consider the January meetings, if there's any consideration to kind of shifting them slightly later in the month, knowing as well we still have to accommodate the FinCom hearings, but I think we would have probably room to do that. And then there was one date in March that, from my understanding, I think it's Purim. Purim. Yeah. That my understanding is that it's more of like an evening specific kind of celebration. I know it's holy that day as well, but again, my understanding is that's more of a daytime celebration or whatever. So those were just the 3 kind of things I threw out there, but I don't know if anyone had any thoughts. We can stick with the original proposition. But on the January meetings, the only thing I was kind of thinking was we've always said we come back and we kind of find like nobody's really engaged in that first meeting back. Kind of everyone's slowly coming online.
It's right after vacation, so
it
makes sense to push it out to me. I saw that, yeah.
It also will like skip that MLK, is it, or Presidents? Which one's January? January is
MLK.
Presidents.
Yeah.
No, MLK. I was confused.
Yeah.
January and February. So it'd skip like that week where we have to push to a Tuesday meeting
Tuesday.
too, if we push to January 11th and then to the 25th.
Yeah.
True.
I mean,
Another advantage.
honestly, if without looking at exactly how it is, but if we skip that 1 week and then resume every other, it might avoid some of the other Tuesdays as well. Like the 19th,
Let me just pull it up here.
like we already skipped the 19th in April, so we go 3 weeks there. So that might actually leave us on a 2-week cycle.
So I hadn't proposed that we change
No,
any
I
of the
know,
other
but
ones, that we
no.
just kind of change the January and then that February one to kind of balance it out, and then we kind of resume
Oh,
the
I
rest
see.
of
Yeah,
it,
that's a
if you
3
saw
week
it.
there.
Yeah.
I see. Okay. Yep.
Um, I mean, we can try it. We can, if
We also start the year with back-to-back weeks, right? The 31st? No?
Yes.
And then the 8th?
trying to pull it up. I had it open here a minute ago. It's lost on me.
Is that part of that Robinson School Building Committee related? Just the,
I mean, I think,
gonna hit the ground
We-
running in September?
I mean, we're gonna have to like kind of merge the Robinson topics
Yeah.
with the agendas, and then if we're tight, we just might have to add a meeting or something. The fall is gonna be busy.
Let me ask a logistical question here. If we approve these dates now, are these set in stone, or can we come
100%.
December say, you know what, we're not going to be ready? Let's.
We have authority over
Yeah.
our own
Yeah,
schedule.
I'm just making sure that is the case,
Yeah.
because
We can control.
Isn't that great?
I mean,
Yeah.
so
I don't know.
Don't let the power go to your head, but that's,
No,
really,
but
that's where we
so-
shine.
On the other hand, it could be good to have a meeting coming back from vacation that we can just get through some other business that's not tied to budget, and knowing that we might have some long budget hearing meetings that, you know, maybe it's good to just leave that there as a
is.
placeholder, yeah, and.
Oh, keep the 4th as a
Keep the 4th
placeholder,
as
but
it
go
is,
with
and-
the other 2.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm glad to hear we can adjust our schedule, because I think it's great that we identified Purim as a date we want to take off. I just don't know if there are others that I'm just not aware of, you
Yeah.
know, that we should be looking at. So if those come up, good to know we can
Yeah.
be flexible, so.
Well, my research online, because I did that as well, I was like,
Okay.
okay, let me go double check all the dates and yeah, so that was just the one. Okay, so with that, I'll circle back to approving our consent agenda. All 7 items, the school committee meeting minutes from the 11th, the tri-board meeting minutes, the individual contracts, the field trip requests, the proposed school committee calendar, our budget transfers, and that letter of support. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thanks, Bill. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thanks, Tom. All in favor? Super. There we go. Next, we'll move on to public comment. Just a reminder, if you are in the room or at home to speak, let us know your name, your address, and we typically look for brief synopsis, but it doesn't look like we're falling down with public comment tonight. Anything online, Val? Okay. We're obviously doing a great job and getting nothing wrong, so no complaints. And so we'll move on to our informational updates, and we'll go to Dr. Chu and Ms. Moran.
Really just 2 quick updates. I did share with all of you the wonderful slide presentation that Mr. Ngano had shared with us about the civics projects. I just thought, just kind of highlighting that again, the number of our 8th graders across the district specifically who get engaged in different service activities through the civic action project that they do every year. It's one of those things that we don't always talk a lot about, and he had shared a bunch of great photos saying that like over 80 students, I think, had been involved in different volunteer aspects of it, because sometimes the action project might not necessarily require a hands-on aspect to it, but I think we're just grateful to the work that all of our civics teachers are doing, and
A number of them popped up at
yeah.
the select board meetings in town
Yeah,
and
yeah,
everything.
yeah.
Public comment, it was awesome.
And then the other piece I just wanted to highlight, you know, we are in the season of all of the different read alouds for students, and so last week Abbott specifically had a literacy celebration week, and Friday was their final celebration where they had awards and stuff, and they asked me to be their mystery reader, so that was a lot of fun. But we get the opportunities to go into classrooms and read stories in the spring, and I just think it's always a great thing, and I'd encourage you, as you get invited, because I know at different times you'll be invited to go in and read to a class, and it's the students are always super appreciative and always have loads of questions, and so it's a great opportunity.
And piggybacking on that, the day school did a great project called One Book, One Grade, where they all read from The Amazing Generation, and I was privileged enough to be able to participate in that last week. I'm not going to say any more than that because we are inviting some representatives from the 5th grade to speak to us on our last school committee meeting about that whole project that the 5th grade team worked on. It's great.
Super, thanks. Any school committee updates that people want to share? Quiet week.
Quiet.
All too busy. Okay, well, with that, we will swiftly move along. So our first item on the agenda this evening, we'll invite our middle school and high school principals, or we'll do middle school first, to speak about our school improvement plans and student handbooks, I suppose, while we're here, makes sense. And welcome, Mr. Ngano, to your first official.
Last time I was here, I got to talk about civics. So.
Exactly. Now you get to talk about it all.
Good evening. The first thing that we're going to go through are going to be the handbook updates. We've got a good amount of them, but a lot of them are very much housekeeping. Obviously, the first thing is going to be a lot of the general, whether it's grammatical updates, updating phone numbers, or updating to our brand new beautiful website as well. So when we start getting into some serious language pieces, we remove the language around students may use personal cell phones, tablets, wearable technology, and laptops in class at teacher discretion. And we have brought that in line with the WPS policy on personal devices and updated that piece. Obviously, both of the buildings use the Yonder pouches, so that's not even an option. Next item, we removed some language around visitors, as far as the removed language was about where they enter and how they enter the building. It was in there twice. So we took it out the second time and just left it in the section labeled visitors. And then the next one was removal of repetitive language around homework. If you recall, all the work that was done around the homework policy, that somehow appeared in the handbook twice, one piece right after another. So we removed all of that piece about the purpose of homework and what homework should look like, because it was in there twice, now it's only in there once.
We also added some language for clarity. So we had received some feedback from school committee last year about things that we weren't able to change at the moment. And we also had our school advisory councils go through the handbook, so they kind of divided and conquered. And there was a request to put some clarity, introducing some of the sections. So under middle school athletics, the clarity, it wasn't clear. Can everyone try out? Are there tryouts? All of that. So we changed the language so that it's all sports are open to 7th and 8th graders and students try out, and that cross country and track specifically are open to students in all 3 grades with no tryouts, so that there was more clarity with that. Related to sports, we also updated the academic eligibility language, because the website for athletics was much more clear, and the handbook was very punitive and it wasn't really the practice. So the new language is that a student who's failing a course is not eligible to participate, but eligibility can be restored if a student passes all courses on the next report card issued, and that administration reserves the right to discipline, suspend, or remove students for behavioral or academic reasons. Luckily, we don't have that problem happening with our athletic teams, and I wish this would, but we'd like to keep that going. But we wanted to pull out some more of that punitive language, because it was a little off-putting. And we had some requests to add some clarity about purpose related to new student registration. So we added language at the beginning, just that enrollment and student record procedures are designed to support continuity of learning and ensure that all students are able to access instruction and school support as smoothly as possible, as an introduction to that. In student records, we added language to frame the records as supportive and not as punitive. Student records are maintained to support instruction, communication, and continuity of services while protecting student privacy. In our English language learners section, to provide clarity that English language learner services are provided to ensure students can access the curriculum and participate fully in school learning while developing English proficiency. And then in attendance, we added some language that we hope will encourage some communication between home and school. So regular attendance is essential to student learning. The school, students, and families share responsibility for promoting consistent attendance and communicating when challenges arise. When absences or transitions occur, the school works collaboratively with families to support continuity of learning and a successful return to school routines, just so that it's clear that we are going to try, we want to get the kids back, but we also want to work with families. So that clarity was there.
I mentioned earlier about the 2 buildings being Yonder pouch schools, so we clarified some language around electronic devices. The old language was just about cell phones in the building and would be confiscated if they were being used without permission of the teacher. Parent or caregiver would be asked to retrieve them. Obviously, we already talked about being a Yonder pouch school and the fact that we're not using them. So we made sure to add the piece that, hey, they're supposed to be in the Yonder pouch. Well, it doesn't say hey, you know what I mean. Sorry. That they should be kept in the Yonder pouches, and the parent or caregiver may be asked to retrieve it if it's out and not in the pouch during the school day. And then also to the piece on visitors, for clarification purposes, we did add specific language saying all guests must sign out at the end of their visit as well. So all of that were really all the updates that we did for the new version of the handbook.
The graphic novel could say, hey, 'cause it
Yeah,
could be like
yeah.
a kid talking.
It sounds like you've had this conversation a number of times already.
Feels that way.
Yeah.
Are there any questions on handbook?
I didn't have a question. I just wanted to say thanks for the summary. I know we had talked with the elementary principals last week about that, so I found both summaries that you guys provided to be really helpful, so thank you for that. I know so I do a lot of updating of documents, and it's not always easy to like sit there and keep track of what you changed, so I really appreciate it. Made it really clear and easy for me to not have to read 68 to 80 pages of stuff to try to figure out where things changed, so thank you.
I had a question on the athletics policy. So you mentioned that it's not really the current practice. So now, like if a student has a D in a class, like what is generally the approach to make sure they're balancing everything correctly?
Our goal is really to give kids the access to something that they do find encouraging, exciting, to get them to school, and then we work on the grades in addition to that. We don't want kids to think, well, if I don't do well, I can't come to school for the one reason I'm coming.
Yep.
And so that was part of our reasoning behind that. Obviously, we're not saying, oh, everybody can get Ds, and luckily that's not happening.
Yeah.
But if it were to happen, we would definitely be, supporting the student and communicating with families and all. But our goal is really to make sure that we're not taking away that one thing that is their drive to be in school.
It's really thoughtful. Thanks.
It's also that social connection, like it's a huge
Absolutely.
thing, yeah, so.
Yeah.
Any other questions or clarifications or? Okay. Well, that looks great on the handbooks, guys, so if we want to switch into school improvement plans.
Okay.
Super. So I know Ms. Hammer shared with us all the progress update language on the handouts first, and we'll add that to the packet as we get it.
I thought it was
It's already
there,
in the
though.
packet.
Was it?
Is it the same as this?
It's just the
Oh, yeah.
highlights
No,
that you
we
have.
Oh, yeah.
I
It
think
was in there.
it just looks like the
That's why I'm
highlights,
so
some of your
confused.
highlights.
That.
You did it, you were on the ball.
It worked.
We were a little
I
bit.
mean,
I was.
I don't know. I was sitting
I
here
clearly
going, there
hadn't
must be a
noticed it yet,
difference.
'cause
I was trying to find
Yeah.
the difference between what you handed me and
It
what was
was the
there.
6:32 p.m. panic.
Okay.
I was like
I
looking
don't
for an
know where
Easter
that
egg.
email is. Sorry about that.
No,
Oh,
perfect.
So now you can actually see what we're going to say as well.
Fantastic. I like having a hard copy too.
panicked.
There we go, great. So the first thing we're going to look at is the, for lack of a better term, old school improvement plan and updates on those items, some of which have concluded, some of which have general progress updates, some of which are being rolled into the new one that we will talk about after this. And obviously, our new one is going to use the same goals as the district improvement plan as well that will be in the new one.
All right, so goal one of the 25-26, and actually for the last 3 years, the school improvement plans for Blanchard and Stony were that the learning communities will collaborate to increase alignment of WPS middle school programming and practices while allowing each school to maintain their unique identity. We are going to continue that first strategy, which is evaluating how we are providing feedback to families. What we have done, so that's going to be rolled into our FY27 school improvement plan. We have already begun collecting data from staff, but we know that there have been a lot of caregiver surveys over the past several months. So, and we've done a little bit of that over the past couple of years, so we decided to wait on sending out that survey. But we are we have developed a survey, and we're going to tweak it a little bit more before we share that, and then we'll be using that data. Obviously, that's going to be in the next school improvement plan. We participated in the district equity audit, and this was the participation was accomplished in FY26. We analyzed the data. We're using that information as part of our practice.
So moving on to goal 2, sense of belonging. Once again, we're continuing with this one as well. Members of the Blanchard and Stony Brook learning communities will promote a safe school environment where students and staff embrace diversity, feel a strong sense of belonging, and have an equitable opportunity to thrive. The very first one was around professional development for Learning Center learner-centered approaches, talking about universal design for learning. And as far as in 2026, we had professional development for teachers on UDL in November and March, focusing on representation. And this is something that is continuing on in the FY27 improvement plan. The next two are both items that would be accomplished is kind of the wrong word, that they're just kind of baked in now. They're part of the fabric of each building. The first one is about community building activities that celebrate student diversity, voice, and choice, whether it's assemblies, anti-bullying activities in assemblies, school spirit activities, the peer leader piece, World of Difference. All of this are things that were accomplished in 26, but are just part of the regular operations now of both buildings. And then the next one related to our place in the climate roadmap. Obviously, there were increases in recycling projects, curriculum-based lessons in the science projects, and the civics projects. See what I did there? It really does say it there. And this strategy continues to be part of the regular curriculum efforts in the school. So once again, it's not going away as in it's accomplished, done, we don't think about it. It's just part of the day-to-day operations.
All right, and our third goal with focus on social, emotional, and academic engagement. We've had great partnership with the Pathways to Restorative Communities over the past couple of years, and we've been beginning more and more restorative practices within the school. So this year, in addition to staff at both schools as well as the high school who were trained in Tier 1 and 2 restorative circles, there were 10 middle school staff that were trained in Tier 3 restorative practices for more restorative conversations when there is a harm, either between individuals, a group, or the school community at large. We had PD in February with a focus on circles. Teachers have begun to practice using circles in their classrooms and in their advisories. When we go into a class and say, who's been in a circle? When we do our own circles, the number of kids that are raising their hands is increasing, which is great, and they have an idea of what that means, which is fantastic. So it is a strategy that has been accomplished, and the restorative practices are continuing as part of our school culture and our instructional tools, so during advisory as well as during class time. The second strategy is going to be incorporated into our school improvement plan for FY27, really focusing, and it's actually one of our goals, looking at that pressure valve. How can we release that and reduce it for our students and our staff? The Yonder pouches we have found to have a big impact on student fear of missing out, all of that, and what's going on with my friends and the Snapchat and all. We have had assemblies and activities to help kids identify stress and manage emotions and things like that. The implementation of our Waypoint survey, we did a beginning of year survey. Our end of year survey is actually going to be on June 3rd, so we don't have that data yet. But staff has had access and time to explore the Wayfinder lessons, which are tied directly into those key areas, which has been great. And we are going to be doing more and more work with that in our FY27 school improvement plan. Questions on the update?
I had a question for you on goal 2. You mentioned the community building activities. I think those sound really awesome to be a part of. Do you have a way of, or have you tried to sort of assess the impact of those on students or the student, perception of those activities?
Well, I will say today we had a World of Difference summary for our 8th graders, where we had some of the members of the peer leader team that work with 6th and 7th grade. They sort of asked kids, can you remember some of the things that we did this year? And kids were shouting out, oh yeah, I remember the iceberg activity, and oh yeah, the isms, and oh yeah, the, how we treat people kindly. And sometimes it was just saying, if you see something, say something, all of those kinds of things. So we are getting feedback on that where kids are remembering some of the things that they learned starting in 6th grade. These were 8th graders remembering something they had originally been taught, I think, in August of 6th grade. Actually, the iceberg activity, I believe, is an August or September activity. So there's, there is that. And I do think that I would also say, and I'm sure you're experiencing the same thing, when we meet with kids, if there is something that comes up and we bring up a leadership question that they've taught. Is that really going along with our leadership question? And the kids are like, oh, no, I should have been thinking about it this way. You know, so we get a lot of that in more individual conversations as well with kids, which is great, so.
Awesome.
One of the other pieces, we had a speaker, both buildings earlier in the school year, an author on anti-bullying. And he had a very detailed reflection that he wanted the students to complete. And that was left with us, and he wanted me to pick out some to send along to him. And as I read through them at the end, where he was expecting this aha moment about bullying and culture in the building, a lot of the kids were writing, yeah, I knew that because, and adding these interesting little things about whether it was activities they've done, other programs they saw, things they participated in. So that was certainly not data we were gathering, but it was great to see because it was all right there.
Yeah.
Those sound like success stories for this age group, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, absolutely.
Like, we'll take it.
Absolutely.
Not too cool. Awesome.
So would you like me to pull up the 26, 27 school improvement? Are they exactly the same? Does it?
The goals are exactly the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's like one question that's related but unrelated, I guess, or maybe it kind of relates into going to 27. I know one of the things that I was interested in last year, and it's Mr. Ngano's first year, was how to continue to create more cohesiveness between Stony and Blanchard. So I was just curious if there were any things off the top of your head you could think of from this year. I know in your goals for next year, spoiler alert, right, is to work on some of the programming and the scheduling being a little bit more cohesive, but just in general, I feel like the cultures, you're not gonna always have the same culture at every school, but there's a lot of differences between the school, and as everyone knows, I have a middle schooler myself and can see a lot of that stuff across peer groups, right? So I wasn't sure if there was anything that came top of mind that had happened already. I know you're settling into your new role and learning the school, so probably not so many things yet this year, but.
We do spend a lot of time talking about what's coming up. I mean, we even have the robotics team coming in June, and Adam shot me an email today. Are they coming to your school on this? So we're making sure that we give our kids similar access to different things that are happening at the different schools. Is it perfect? No, but we're working on it. And I think even the assembly, you know, it was originally, I think one of us was they reached out to one of us and we said, well, there are 2 middle schools. Can you do it at both middle schools? And he was, you know, he was interested in doing that, and we were able to do that, which was nice. So we're always trying to look for ways to bring something to both if we're having it at one, but it is still a work in progress, absolutely.
And even something as simple as the Stony Brook Blanchard volleyball game was, the amount of enthusiasm in both buildings around that was great to see.
Yeah.
Even though it didn't come out the way I wanted it to.
Next year.
What?
And, you know, we have the trophy, we're happy.
Thank you.
Can't always be a tie.
Yeah. Everyone's a winner. You get second.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so as we already said, our 3 goals are going to be the same as the district improvement plan, and I'm not sure, as far as the question earlier, the improvement plans between the 2 buildings are the same. I don't know if earlier, I thought we might have been answering a different question, but yes, they are the same.
Okay. All right, so our first goal, you'll recognize it, is that members of the Blanchard and Stony Brook community learning communities will continue to infuse our equity work into our curriculum, instruction, and assessment, the heart of what we do, to ensure high-quality learning experiences for every student. Our first strategy is really focusing on something that is going to be new next year, which is the collaborative data meetings, and the goal is having common data across the 2 buildings that we are analyzing, really to look at student growth. So we're going to, obviously we need to make sure that our staff, they've not had the chance to do this in this way. They analyze data all the time, but in a different kind of a way. So we're going to have 3 collaborative data meetings this coming school year, and we'll be identifying key skills and data points for content and grade level that is consistent across the 2 buildings. And we'll begin to create a formalized structure in order to, and protocol really, to guide teachers through that process so that there is consistency between the grades, between the departments, and between the schools as well. Our second strategy is looking at, this is continuing from our school improvement plans before, related, really focusing on universal design for learning framework and making sure that we're focusing on engaging all students. We'll continue our professional development for staff around UDL. Our focus this coming year will be on action and expression, on the action and expression framework. We've been working on some look-fors for engagement and representation, and so we'll be sharing those look-fors, and we'll begin to provide feedback to staff using those look-fors. That's really what do we see in the classroom that shows these different elements of UDL. So we'll be using, providing staff with feedback on those look-fors as well. Specifically on engagement and representation, and obviously, eventually, it will be on action and expression as well.
So looking at goal 2, a lot of those items about between the buildings that you were asking about, that's where a lot of them are going to live in the new improvement plan. So goal 2, once again, familiar to everyone, equitable student outcomes. Members of the Blanchard and Stony Brook learning communities will assess our organizational structures to ensure equitable learning environments and a sense of belonging for all students. So the very first strategy relates to programming and scheduling between the two buildings. The actions that we're hoping to take in FY27 would be a joint schedule task force between the buildings to review current schedule models and areas for improvement between the two buildings to align them better. This is not only about the student experience, but this is also about shared staff as well. To assess the access and use of technology at the middle school level. Certainly, I know we mentioned surveys already. There are more surveys involved here because you can't improve what you don't measure. So we're going to need to figure out exactly how people are using technology, how they're feeling about it, and really dig down into that data to identify areas of improvement. And that doesn't necessarily mean more technology. That might mean, you know, better use, less use, very specific use of various technologies. On strategy 2.3, and certainly this is something that relates directly to, I know what Mr. Toomey's got going at WA, is developing portrait of a middle school learner, identifying key skills across the grade level to try to figure out what does it look like to be a successful middle level learner as you come in and as you exit. And this is also going to involve collaborating with the elementary and high school to really establish that continuum of what does the portrait of a learner look like throughout Westford Public Schools.
Adam, could
Yes,
I
sir.
ask you, put you on the spot and just ask you, would you be able to talk maybe 30 seconds to a minute just about what the peak cohort has been, the PEAA 2K cohort piece that, so there's this, it didn't show up in the elementary school improvement plans, but one of the things that has been taking place this year is that we've had a cohort led by Lisa Sanderson, who is our digital instructional technology specialist supervisor. We have a lot of acronyms,
Yeah, I
and
was
that
about to
one's
say we
changed
need
over
an
time, so
acronym there.
I apologize for getting that wrong. But the cohort, we have members from both Stony Brook and from Blanchard and from WA who've been a part of this cohort through DESE, looking at AI and different, as we're looking to develop different policies and protocols, and we haven't really talked about that. But since it's going to be one of the things we're doing next year, could you give us like a little soundbite as to that work that took place?
I'm known for my brevity, right?
I should have asked Dan, that's true. I should have asked Dan.
No, I can do this. So we have participated in this. It kicked off with an in-person workshop at UMass Lowell, and it has really been digging into the uses of AI for teachers and students, but also the responsible use thereof and how quickly the landscape is changing. If there was one single big takeaway from the whole thing that I've had, it's that having an AI policy is pointless. You need a position, because the policy, by the time it goes through the process of being enacted and officially approved, the landscape has changed so dramatically that it's outdated. And when we're at those workshops, a lot of it has been about whether it's Brisk that we have access to in district, whether it's Gemini, which is part of our Google Suite, whether it's Microsoft's Claude, or Copilot or Claude, any of those things. Yes, there's positives, yes, there's negatives, and I think the trick is developing a position as a district to encourage responsible and safe use of these things that's going to enhance learning and not replace thinking.
That's good, thank you.
Nailed it.
Yeah. We'll give you more information about that in the future. They've asked us to participate in a second cohort. Surprise. Lisa did an excellent job securing grant funding for us to be able to do this in the first place, so she actually told them we don't have access to those same grants, so the question is whether DESI's going to find sponsors for us to participate, so we'll see. But I'm like, we made it clear that it's not in our budget,
Yep.
So if they really want the Westford folks to participate,
They gotta-
hopefully they will find a sponsor.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense.
But thank you for all that work
Yeah.
that you've all been doing on that, yeah.
And our third goal is focusing on social, emotional, and academic engagement. So members of the Blanchard and Stony Brook learning communities will prioritize mental health and wellness for all of our students and staff by exploring strategies to minimize academic and/or social emotional pressure valves that negatively impact performance. So our first strategy is implementing social emotional learning strategies as a means for building relationships, community, and academic engagement. Really, we're starting with, at the beginning of this, looking at the Waypoints data that we have a little bit of and we'll have more of in about a week and a half. And next year we'll be doing those surveys at the beginning, middle, and end of the school year. So that data will then be accessible to all staff, and it's very quick in its turnaround, and the data, when we can look at it, when we can get information from it. So staff will be analyzing that data and identifying really what are the needs for individual students, but also for grade levels and individual classes perhaps, groups or grade levels, and all of the different kind of iterations of they can do it by their class, they can do it by an advisory, they can do it with a small cohort. Counselors can look at particular kids, so there are ways that we can use that data that will be really, really helpful. And they will begin to implement circles and Wayfinder lessons. The lessons are very comprehensive. Some of them are literally, you open it and it is a lesson for you that you can tweak as much as you want. Some of them are in circle format, some of them are more, more collaborative format. It's all different, but teachers can make them what they are. They give you the time frame, they give you a lot of information about what it is, so it's very user-friendly, and they're really very, very good. We've used several of them this year and really have been pleased with each and every one of them, so they're really very powerful. So we want, our staff is going to begin to implement those circles and Wayfinder lessons, really focusing on those areas that we identify through our Waypoint surveys. The second strategy is collectively evaluating our means for communicating progress to caregivers of students in grades 6 to 8 and to develop plans to improve feedback for student growth. So we have given, as I mentioned, we've given, our staff has taken a survey about how we communicate progress. We will be collecting data and then analyzing that data from caregivers about how we're sharing student progress as well. And then from that data, we're going to be looking at ways that we can increase the effectiveness of how our student progress is communicated to students and to caregivers. And also part of that, and it will not be on day one, but we are going to evaluate the implementation of opening the portal in PowerSchool so that students and caregivers have a clear picture of their progress. One of the things that we've found, and this is not going to be day one, so if there are people watching who are worried, do not worry. It is not day one, because it's a little frightening for everybody involved. But it is really powerful when kids and families can see an ongoing score and know how they're doing, and it's not a grade range. And so we really want to make sure that we're able to help kids understand that in a way that is not, it's in this decrease the pressure valve. We do not want to increase it. So we're looking at ways that we can put some parameters on what kind of notifications get sent out. You got a 0, you got a 0, you got a 0 is not going to decrease the pressure valve. So we're going to look at ways that we can really kind of control that, but also have information that that students and families have access to, so that they really do know how their kids are doing. We found that especially when we were looking at levels from, for Algebra 1, as well as when the kids in 8th grade were trying to figure out what they qualified for going into 9th grade, and they didn't know their average. Sometimes they did and sometimes they didn't, and they would ask questions, and teachers were like, well, they don't have their average, and then there was a lot of information sharing, but it was stressful for kids who just didn't know what it meant, and families as well. And so we're really trying to help decrease that.
I can see where the multiple zero notifications could be pressured, but
Yeah.
also little pressure as opposed to the end of the term and you have a
Yes.
50, right?
Absolutely.
So I think there's something to be said about getting that notification as a parent, as a student. Wait, I missed something, or So I
Well, the question is, and I would pose that maybe we consider it is, does the student even need access to that at this level? Like, I understand at the high school they do, but seeing as you're kind of looking at it, and maybe it's just something that
Yeah.
you're giving the parents that information, if we're trying to keep that balance of, like,
I guess I was gonna
not
ask
wrapping them up in, numbers.
if part of the conversation might be more consistent use of the Google Classroom. So I feel like there are some teachers that do expose the grades to their students on an ongoing basis, some don't put all assignments in there or don't do them all to the end. So I feel like some consistency in the Google Classroom might help alleviate some, at least of the student's viewpoint. I can only speak for my middle schooler's experience.
It's definitely Google Classroom versus Power School. There are people who are in two different camps, and then there's the old school paper and
Yeah.
pencil person like I was, even though I did use a Power School as well. But that information, we are looking for some consistency. We also don't want to control everything that a teacher is sharing, because there's some information that you don't want out there right away, because it's not time yet for that information to be out there. And I mean, like, when you get an essay assignment and those are being graded, it takes a long time. So if that essay, if you're assuming it's going to be done in 3 days, you won't have an accurate reflection of how your child has done. So I don't know if we can limit what students have access to versus what parents have access to. That would be a Power School issue we'd have to figure out. And we are exploring those things right now, trying to figure out, there have been questions about, would there be a difference between 6th, 7th, and 8th grade? How do we make sure that we're really looking at the individual grade level, at least? We can't look at each individual student necessarily when we're doing this, but the individual grade levels as how is that information going to be communicated in a way that is really age appropriate. So we're thinking about all of those things.
It seems like an opportunity to really set the tone from administration for families' expectations. Like you said, don't pester the teacher for the essay grade 3 days after your child turned it in. And I just want to make sure that we're setting that from the outset, so it's not something that then adds another thing to the teacher's plate that we're trying not to. So it sounds like you are on top of that. I just wanted to say it out loud.
Yeah, no, we definitely have in our mind that we need to communicate to families and staff. This is how it's
Shared
going to be
expectations.
rolled out,
Yeah.
and also these are the expectations for staff, and so that families are aware of that as
Right.
well.
And I think it also points to a tool, right? A different communication tool that the parents are no longer needing to necessarily email the teacher, right? And the teacher having to respond to what's my student's grade?
Yeah.
Go check Power School or Google Classroom, whichever the tool is. And just,
more complaints about password resets.
well, there is that, but
Trying to fix it.
Every
There
time
there shouldn't
go
be
into
any
Power
more.
School.
So-
Password
It should be
reset.
fixed.
so I think
Fixed now. Yeah, it's fixed.
I think if there's a way to alleviate those common questions, right? You're never going to take it completely away from reaching out to the teacher, especially if there's a question about a grade. But I think it empowers the student and the parents to have that information potentially. So I think that's a good exercise to at least consider how to do it and what to do appropriately.
I had a quick question on goal 2 about the sort of programming and scheduling. When we were talking about that at the district level, one of the things I was envisioning for that was last year with a lot of the, oh, my words are gonna fail, graduation requirements conversation, we were talking a lot about like flexibility and gates in our scheduling and stuff. So I was kind of hoping that some of that would come into this, into the conversation about what gates and schedule flexibility we have for middle schoolers. So when you briefly went over it, it sounded a little bit more like alignment. And so I just didn't know if some of that would also play out into the gates and the flexibility.
We are also thinking about what are the things that our kids all have access to, and are there kids that don't have access to those things because of the structure of our schedule.
Right.
So it's not just, there's going to be alignment.
Yep.
We're hoping that we can think about the things that have been the best of Blanchard, the best of Stony. How can we
Okay.
really, take those things and put them together, but
Yep.
also what do our kids need in order to make sure that they all are able to leave middle school with a more common experience if they
Yeah.
aren't having one right now. And making sure that we're really looking at all of those things, especially related to, academic coaching, academic support, world language. There are lots of questions about that.
Okay.
So we're
Great.
definitely keeping all of that in mind.
And I'm sure there's so many layers to it, right? Like it's an onion, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
I had two more comments. One was the first one about the collaborative data meeting. So I mentioned last week with the elementary teachers that I don't know, maybe you guys watch our school committee meetings. You already heard me, but there's a lot of excitement, I feel like, from staff about these collaborative data meetings and getting to really sit down all together and digest a lot of the data. While I feel like on the parent side, we see a lot of angst about more half days. And so I had suggested with the elementary teachers about putting together something for your principal blurb, like ahead of the collaborative data meetings. And I don't know if you pushed that down already.
I shared that with all of them
Okay.
and quoted you. Actually
Yeah.
gave you the credit for it.
So I think it would be really helpful to see, like, for the parents to see, like, why you guys are so excited about it. So, okay, I won't repeat myself more. The only other comment I had was I thought it would be really cool, great, whatever term you want to use, for the slides that were in here from 8 to 11 in each of your packets that talked about some of the MCAS scores. I thought it would be really great to have Blanchard, Stony, and the state in one graph. Because I was finding myself trying to think like, oh, from an equity perspective, like how are our Stony students doing versus our Blanchard students? And I was trying to go back and forth between the two documents and just thought it would be really great for those 4 charts to have Blanchard, Stony, and the state together so that we could see like.
So I'll interrupt and say that's actually one thing as a district we've decided not to do for a long time, is to compare the elementary schools to each other or the separate middle schools. So we've talked in terms of, now, we
Retract
might
my
in the
statement.
future. No, we might in the future.
Yeah.
It's a good question.
I
but-
mean, in
but-
theory, they're both sitting there in 2 documents, and I
That's
just
right,
had
so
to-
someone can do
yeah,
that.
yeah.
But
Open and-
we have made a concerted effort as a district to not compare
Side by
the
side.
schools side by side because the context is not the same.
Right.
And so we've been looking to see, okay, what are we looking at as a district? When it comes down to having like a public conversation about it. So, that's all. I'm not saying that we won't do that in the future. I'm just telling you why they didn't do it right now, because we've not done that. We have made a decision not to do that.
And when you say the context is not the same, can you explain to me what you mean by that? Because in general, I have a viewpoint of we're trying to give the same learning experience
We are.
across our schools. So how are you viewing the can you?
I can tell you that the population at all the schools is not necessarily
Yeah.
the same. And so there might be a different year where the achievement data is different in a different building than it is someplace else. And I will say the general public doesn't look at it that way. And will again turn and say, well, what is this school doing that school's not doing? And so then you spend all this time trying to create and make sure that everybody understands that actually all of our students and the district as a whole is doing very well. We're looking for the individual ways that we can best meet the needs of our individual students and the cohorts that exist in different schools. But sometimes when you look at them across the district, and if you don't necessarily know what, for example, sometimes we have schools that qualify for Title I services and others don't, and they will have different resources in one building because it's been funded through a grant in a different way. So those are the different things that we kind of look at. But I think if people wanted to see that, then I think there are ways that we can make sure that we are telling the whole picture so that we can make sure that the context is clear. But that's why as a district, we've always said, this is the middle school, this is the 3 to 5 schools. Well, it's never the K to 2 because they don't take MCAS, right?
Yeah.
And then, of course, the academy is always it is by itself
itself.
because that's the way it is, but.
Yeah, I
There've
could
been a-
see comparisons more of a trend rather than, because it really is a day in time. It's a snapshot of a day, and there could be any number of reasons that day was really bad for any number of students in one of the schools that could
Yeah.
skew things, so. I think it's valid, definitely, right? But I think that the comparison year over year would be more valid than like that one day for 2 schools. Yeah.
I can also just say anecdotally, being a middle school principal for a long time, when I first started in this district 13 years ago, going into the elementary schools and having 5th grade students say that they want to go to one or the other middle school because their parents said that one's better, and it was because of MCAS data. I immediately was like, so.
That's not what I was thinking of.
I know you weren't.
I was
But
more
that's
thinking
why,
like,
that's
you
why I
open
was like, wait,
Pandora's
there's.
box.
Struggling at
Shayna.
math in both schools in a certain grade level?
Yeah, yeah.
Are we struggling in English in both schools? Like, do we have a gap
We can-
somewhere?
But we can still do that by
So-
looking at the middle school as a whole,
Yeah,
right?
in the conversation.
But to the point, I just share that's where I think sometimes people take the data and they use it in a way that I don't think is helpful.
So maybe the consideration would be to combine the data together and have one middle school picture instead of, if you don't
Yeah,
want to
we've
break them
done that.
onto
This would be a
two.
discussion point at those CDMs. I mean,
When,
this-
when we
Yeah.
did the MCAS report,
be-
you saw it as middle school and 3 to 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the way we presented
That's
it
how
to
we
the
do
school
it,
committee, yeah.
Well, and to that end, perhaps going forward, rather than presenting us a Stony Brook and a Blanchard, it's just the middle school improvement plan going forward.
It could.
Same thing for elementary. I mean, we're seeing this over the past several years now
They
that,
become so
that they're,
aligned.
you're
So
presenting
aligned.
together and you're saying we're doing these together. So let's just go ahead and call it what it is, and it's the middle school improvement plan for the district. And
There might still be some differences here and there, but I think it could still be articulated there.
In the one document,
Yep.
color coded or
So-
something. Okay,
Yeah.
mindful of time, I am going to,
Oh,
while we have it here with the middle, do you
Sorry,
have a
I had
question,
one-
Jess?
Well, I just wanted to say it's so exciting that you're doing the AI focus groups. I didn't know about that. I'm really excited to learn more about that. But I realized in looking ahead at the high school student handbook, they have a line about having to do with AI deepfakes and using student. Do you feel like you need anything like that in your handbook?
We do have something that was added last year. It's 60 pages.
I mean, I did see language about AI.
There is language in
For sure.
about AI in
But
here.
they can't turn in assignments and pretend it's theirs when it's AI. That makes total sense, but I think the language that, Principal Toomey has is more about,
Oh, fake
not using
images.
images
Of
people.
other,
Of
it's more
students.
like along the lines of bullying type.
Okay,
Yeah, I
I see what
Just
you're
come
saying.
out of brand new.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
We can kind of look at that and
Add
see
that
if,
in.
I don't think it would be I don't think it would be bad to.
No,
Okay.
unfortunately.
to
Yeah.
do that.
If you are-
You're exactly,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
if you are gonna add it, I was gonna say when Principal Toomey's here that, you might wanna consider adding the word staff as well. Right now, it's just student-like
Yeah.
images, but.
Yeah, I
That
think that
protection
makes a
to our
lot of
staff,
sense.
too.
Yeah.
Yeah, good catch, Jess.
Sure.
So,
Would you
do
like
we
us
want to
to
have,
include that in the motion?
we can include that in the motion?
Are you comfortable with us including that line in the motion of our approval? or-
Yeah, I mean, I don't know what the language is exactly, but we can, yes. I believe
think
it's
it
a
is
good, there's
I
a
think it
good
would be
reason for
universal.
it, so.
It's
yeah,
under the
yeah.
student misconduct section, and it's an added line that says, use of another student's or staff's image, comma, photo, comma, likeness, or generated AI image without permission.
Okay.
I think that,
Yeah, we can add that, that's not.
And you
Great catch,
did
Jess.
just add staff as.
Yes.
And we were gonna add
It's in,
staff.
it's in this.
no, it's not. I read it as including it.
Oh, sorry, I thought it was in it.
But you would like us to include staff.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah,
that makes a
that
lot of
makes-
Yeah,
sense.
good catch,
Yeah.
Jess, thank you.
Okay, so we'll make a motion to approve the middle school handbook and improvement plans with the amendment. And so I will take a motion for that one.
So moved.
Thanks, Tom. And a second?
Second.
Thanks, Shayna. All in favor? Super. Great. Thank you
you,
guys
guys.
so much. Appreciate all the work you've done this year. last few weeks, nearly there. Keep it going.
Then it starts again.
Then you get a break. Okay, and now Mr. Toomey, our principal of Westford Academy.
Managed to misplace a document while I was sitting over there. It's that time of year for a high school principal. Good evening, everybody. How you doing?
Are you saying the dog ate your homework?
Yeah.
Just checking.
Literally right there. Though.
Yeah, it was right here, just misplaced for a minute before I got up here. So, handbook first?
Yeah,
Is that where
whichever
we'd like to
works.
go? Okay. So handbook committee continued to do good work, brought it to school council and also, our faculty and staff at our most recent faculty and staff meeting, reviewed what some of the changes are. For the sake of brevity, I'll go through the ones really quickly here. 1 and 2 is just clarification to basically match how the MIA phrases being in school for a majority of the school day and how we had it previously. It's just saying 3 full blocks now. That's pretty much what that one is. If you go to proposal number 3, change language of types of work to include classwork and homework. There's staff has been, this is very organic on some of these handbook policies. We've been hearing from staff about, well, what about classwork and homework that students are returning from competitions or field trips or absences, and just trying to make it all part of the discussion as far as, what goes into your grade. So added some language there. Proposal number 4, language around missed work and field trips, more of the same. We do have a lot of field trips. We have a lot of students in competitions, whether it's music, DECA, robotics. We're a busy place. There's a lot going on. So we're trying to clarify the language around for students to help them understand what is responsible, how they should go about doing it. They should communicate with their teachers in advance to come up with a plan on how they might make up those assessments or what their work they might be missing. So that was number 4. 5 is just an editorial. It's the same. It's the spirit of the same rule. It ends, and then it'll be reflected in the under the responsibility under the homework policy that we have. So that's homework there. 6, reduce the number of days of students can be absent in a quarter. Now, that would be unexcused absences. I think if I could write that again, I would say unexcused absences. We still have excused absences, with doctor's notes. We allow things such as 3 college visits a year for some of our upperclassmen. Any legal type matters, those types of things. We all have they're very in line with what the state thinks is an excuse. Now, we make up our own excused absence. We don't make it up, but it's a local decision on what's excused. So that is actually reducing it. It was currently 6 or more absences in a quarter. We're gonna bring it to 5. And again, these are organically coming from the staff on the front lines of students being out of school consistently. And it could be a trip, it could be a family trip, it could be a million different reasons. At the end of the day, the state just talks about absences, right? They don't talk about why you're absent. It's just you're not in the building. We're trying to juggle that by trying to have our students there. Now, the way the policy is written is, or way the handbook is written, is right now, you could have 24 absences a school year, and that's a lot. That's a lot. So we're trying to bring that in, trying to balance it, also trying to respect, when students are sick, you stay home. You have those days to play with each quarter. We're not expecting a doctor's note if your student has a fever and they're not feeling good for a day or 2. Come back to school. Doctor's notes for extended absences, mental health issues, anything along those lines. Documentation, we work with those families to, try to get students back in on track as quickly as we can.
Dan, can we
Yeah,
just
go
ask a
ahead.
question there?
Yep.
So in that example of student with a fever for a day or 2, that would still be an unexcused though, right?
Correct, yes.
Okay.
You know, if they go to the doctor and the doctor's note says, you know, if they go for a strep test or something
Right.
along, and they provide that saying that they were at the office that day, then they would submit that and that would become excused.
I'm just curious
Yeah,
on
go.
that, Dan, because I suppose now that we also have the at-home tests for the flu A and flu B and stuff, and I know there's doctors' offices kind of don't want you coming in if you kind of know what you have. So I'm just curious if there's a way that there's a way of creating that excuse absence without actually having to be physically in a doctor's office, knowing that there's some parents, and I'm one of them, where I know they've got a heavy cold or they've a flu, I just need to keep fluids, and, you know, I don't feel bringing them into the doctor is going to do anything, only get me the paperwork. And so I kind of wonder, is there something, a conversation we could have around that about kind of the logistics of those excused absences? Because I tell you, my house this year, we've never had as much sickness. It kind of stunned me this winter. And
Say, this year you could ring up those 5 days real fast.
oh yeah,
This particular year was pretty bad.
yeah. And we had flu A and B kind of we had the whole gamut and come in, and so that's what I'm just thinking of those families who are like constantly, and then obviously cost of going to doctors and co-pays
Right.
and everything else. So
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
Maybe there's a conversation there
Yeah.
on what else would be acceptable as an unexcused absence.
We could also talk to our district physicians.
Yep.
You know, we have 2 physicians that consult with us, and we could actually ask them from their perspective,
Yeah.
right? Like there might be a way that offices would be willing to work with a family
Yeah.
even without having to go into the office. I don't
Yeah.
know. So we can ask them.
Yeah, maybe they can issue a note through one of the gateway apps, you know, or whatever, the tools that they're using, the doctor's
Yeah.
office, maybe.
Maybe.
I guess I'm just also curious, like, how often this is happening. Like, a loss of credit just feels so massive.
Mhm.
And so, like, how many times do you think it was happening?
It's increasing.
With the 6
Oh, wow.
absences? Okay.
Yeah, it is increasing, but it's I would say it's increasing. The types of absences where, you know, John's out today not feeling well, those types of absences are happening. Now, is he not really feeling well, or is it a strategic absence?
Okay.
It's, those types of absences are increasing. Yeah, generally, when students are truly sick and they're out for a period of time, they will produce something, and if they lose credit in a quarter, it's not a significant deal if they lose credit, and that the further language in here clarifies that more.
Okay.
Under proposal number 8.
Oh, okay.
That kind of cleans that up as well about how we determine what that credit recovery might look like. If it's as simple as they're over, you know, they've over the threshold by a day or two, it could be it's pretty easy to.
Conversation?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, to figure out what is needed to be done. Speaking of number 8, we've also, that talks a little bit about the credit recovery. It reflects a more accurate description of what we want it to do. Not so much of it used to be, if you read the old language, it was like, you know, if you lose it for quarter 1, 2, then you lose it again. And it didn't really count for quarter 4 in some scenarios. So we're clarifying that language to make it a quarter by quarter decision on credit truly.
And
Okay.
can I just ask one more question on that?
Yeah.
Are we talking like full absence for a day or missing like a
Well,
particular class?
there's 2 pieces, yep.
Okay.
There's, if you are fully absent from school 6 days or, for 5 or more days,
Yep.
then you could lose credit in all your classes. But with the rotating schedule, it's where they all fall. So
Right.
a lot of times it falls to what blocks have been missed.
Yeah.
And that's really what we're looking at, is the class by class example of how many classes they're missing. Again, it could be strategic absences, that they just, every 7 days, they're coming in an hour late, or something along those lines. So just trying to clean it up on how our absences are calculated, going forward.
Just a question about students with chronic illness. Is there a program in the school system where the school is required to provide tutors, or how does that work? For instance, students who are out with an orthopedic issue, or if they have immune function issues and you know, kind of illnesses that don't make them look like they're terribly sick, but really affect their overall health.
You want
Yes,
to,
sure. I mean, we have, any student, general ed, special ed, whatever, does have access to tutoring if they fall into that category. It is a medical professional that would indicate to us that they've confined the student to a home or hospital setting because of an extenuating medical situation. And with that, they indicate what that looks like, what the accommodations need to be. And we look at each case individually to see what type of tutoring should be offered to that student. As you can imagine, medical issues can vary, and so the child's availability or the student's availability for education at that given time might be compromised. So there are times that the tutoring might take place when the student is feeling much, much better, or, you know, after the fact.
Right.
But we do provide that.
Okay, thank you. And that's a part of the public free education, correct?
Correct. And then if there's a student who has an extenuating circumstance, that might look a little bit different. So there are two pieces of statute that support those chronically absent students.
I just wanted one other thing, just to clarify or to kind of check in. Does this language cover, I'm just thinking of the student, the conscientious student who does his or her best and is usually on top of stuff and then gets whammed with the flu and is out for a solid week. I know there's students in our district who go back then with such anxiety because they feel like, oh my gosh, I have to catch up on all this work. If we're reducing this obviously down to the 5 days and stuff, is there a balance for that? Like, does this allow to kind of ease that anxiety for students who, you know, they know the work and stuff, they may not have got that essay in or whatever, but does that kind of review panel allow kind of a bit of
Yes.
leeway for those students
Yes.
as well?
Yeah, and that's why we want to include the educators. Primarily, before it was administrator, school counselor.
Okay.
We want the educators in the classrooms to have say. You know, they know the student best in that particular subject or whatever it might be. So yeah, that's why we have changed that language to include feedback from them.
Kind of felt, but yeah.
Yes.
Appreciate that. Thanks,
I
Tom.
think the last thing I would say is that if we learned nothing else from 2020, it's that we do want our educators and our students, if you're not feeling good, to not come in and share that and shut the building down. Because I know there's, this year there were actually a couple districts that actually had to shut down for a day or two because it was just so rampant.
Yeah.
So I caution, I understand the value of, unfortunately, getting the students into the building. But I also understand the value of, it's Friday, it's not strategic, it's, you know, my student doesn't feel good, and we don't want that to then
Absolutely.
linger for the
I
next
think
week
it would
in
be
the rest of the
interesting
building.
in a year, like to review it for the year,
Yeah.
after the year and see kind of your takeaway, Principal Toomey, as to how you feel this has gone and if it's kind of addressing what you're hoping it's going to address without, I suppose, negatively impacting
Yeah,
those
absolutely.
students. So I think that would be helpful.
Well, and do we have a sense of scale? Like, what percentage of students are losing credit, you know, in a quarter? And if we change this threshold, what percentage of students, you know, that maybe had 5 absences and weren't going to trigger it, now suddenly will fall into
Yeah,
that?
it's a small percentage. I don't have that exact data
Yeah.
with me. I can certainly get that. I would say there would be an uptick. It might be more documentation that might be required of people that didn't turn in things that previously flew under the radar, or just reasons that we didn't know why they were absent, even though we asked for that reason.
Right.
It might be not documented well. So I think there'll be more of that.
Okay.
But I can find that.
That's okay. I don't need an exact number,
Sure.
but I just thought off the top of your head, you know, 2, 3. Like, are we talking order of magnitude? Is it like a small percentage?
Yeah,
of
it's a small
students?
percentage, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think this relates to all of them, but particularly here because I do see conversations a lot that are, someone remind me what unexcused means, somebody remind me what excuse means. You know, where do I find that? although we hope everybody prints the handbook and puts it on like their nightstand. Do you have a plan for like some of these bigger changes and like communicating them?
Yeah, over the summer, and certainly in my administrative emails when I'm sending them out, the
Okay.
back to school night, the freshman orientations, we meet with all the classes. Some of this stuff will be sent out before the school year is over.
Yeah.
As far as changes, just, talking about, the CDMs.
Yep,
And also, the change in absences.
yep.
So I think,
Can you remind me, does your back to school night start with like any kickoff from you or something?
yes.
Okay, so that might be another way, yeah, because you've
Yeah,
got like a,
absolutely. Yeah, back to school.
Yeah.
And we're a little bit earlier next year.
Right.
Which I enjoy.
thank you.
If I could keep going on.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Just, let's see, cell phones. That was the one I was trying to get to.
Juicy one.
Yeah, we're gonna start the school year, when I like to start the school year, with all the talk at the state level between the state legislature, the Senate, and the House, and what I feel like is an imminent thing that's coming at us. We're gonna start the school year with cell phones off and away. We haven't locked down, I don't know if yonder pouches are appropriate. I don't know. Talking with some of my colleagues in the league and at the state level, there's always there's another tech option out there, that locks down cell phones at an appropriate time. So I don't know about that part yet, but we will start the year with cell phones off and away.
Kind of setting the expectation
Yes.
essentially regardless.
Yes, and we're also going to do that so we can learn a little bit more about it,
Yeah.
Before any potential legislation comes. If it comes between now and, September 1st, I know there's talk of a November implementation. There might be
Yeah.
a policy that might need to come, all these things. But, my staff, my administrative team, we go back and forth about this. We do. And we've been trying, the option that, we're going to let our students learn how to use them, and it's still problematic.
Yeah.
And I anticipate some problems next year, but we're going to have a clear policy of what happens if you have it out, and, how a teacher will ask you to put it away, or then they might take it and put it on their desk, and you can take it at the end of class, and if it happens again, then it'll be given, to a dean, or we'll have something clear in place for that on how it'll be handled.
And Dan, do you mean like during passing and like
All day.
lunchtimes all day?
All day.
Which is, so it's mirroring what really looks like the state is going to implement anyway? Yeah, perfect.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
So, the-
Bell to bell, yeah.
bell to bell.
I have some concerns about the word prohibited, because that removes all flexibility for, changing throughout the year. Or if a teacher has a educational purpose. Again, I fully understand the stressors that social media and everything puts on. But I also don't think that it's preparing our students for leaving the doors of WA to say, you can't have a cell phone. I really think that there are appropriate uses. And if we're preparing our students for life after WA, I think there's something to be said about teaching them the appropriate use. That paired with, perhaps we're not accessing personal emails on school devices, and our students that are applying for colleges and waiting for those communications. Maybe there is something to be said about in those personal times,
I will say, Tom, I
lunch.
will just agree with you on this one. I actually think this is probably one of the best things that could come for our students in terms of the social emotional thing.
and
And
I-
they finished at 2:30 every day, so plenty of time to check
I'm
emails.
just, yep, I'm just saying
and
that.
they have Chromebooks and.
If we're putting it prohibited in the handbook, that doesn't give you any flexibility to lighten that up. If it's prohibited in the handbook, it's prohibited.
Yeah.
And, so.
I
think-
sorry, Jess, you may go.
I think that alleviates some stress. I mean, there was a
Yeah,
great
for those-
panel last year by some high school students who were saying, you know, that when the teachers just really say, no, you've got to put it away, like they're
Yeah.
relieved, you know?
Yeah.
And so when it's wishy-washy and unclear, that's when it's hard
And
for everybody.
As a teacher in the trenches right now, if when you say that we're going to teach students those skills, there's absolutely a part in that, but I would be cautious about what that adds to a teacher's plate right now. And there's a lot on our plates right now, so.
No, and I
you
get
know,
that too.
I see it every day, you know, in the middle schools and what it looks like, and I think there needs to be a firmness here. Absolutely, in cases of students on IEPs or you know, different
Medical.
situations, medical needs, there has to be some accommodations made, but I think this will be a blessing more so, once this is outlined for the entire Commonwealth, so.
And we've heard so much from middle school staff, how much they've appreciated the underpages and how it just took that, like, there was no question marks above it, about it. So I think for high school staff, the fact that they will all have just that, you know, the question of doubt is kind of removed. So I think it'll be interesting to see.
Was there any conversation about an added emphasis, like prohibited in school, like including lunchtime?
Yeah,
It's DLTs, right? Is that the right acronym?
Yeah.
What we used to call study halls, to just, it says in school, which
Yeah.
to every person should mean the entire school day, but I feel like to some teenagers, it's like, well, but I'm in the cafeteria, but it's my lunch break, but I'm on the, you know, I'm at study hall.
Or it's after school and I'm still in the building.
Or, yeah, to
Right,
see
so-
whether or not there should have been, like, was there any conversation about the need to emphasize, like,
That's a good
in
question.
school, including the times that you know that the teenager might push the envelope to try to use the phone, just for clarification. And maybe that's not this year's iteration, maybe that's a further conversation. I was just curious if it had come up.
Yeah, oh, it definitely came up. Like, it's come up in a million different ways. We've lived it, where we've allowed them to use it during cafeteria and passing time, and, you know, our building is not just a stagnant, you know, move at one time kind of place. There's a lot of activity all day long, and it's a difficult of who's where and where are you doing and what are you doing and why do you have, is this, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
There's 1,500 students moving about at any time during the school day.
But Shayna, is your point to
My
like
point
make it
was, maybe
overly
we
clear?
should add it in
Yeah.
to be overly clear, yeah,
And
that
be
it should
overly
say,
clear.
students are prohibited from using personal electronic devices in school, it says cell phone
During
stuff,
the entire school day,
including,
Or-
yeah, or something that says this
DLTs.
includes the entire school day from bell to
I
bell,
mean, even the
or,
like state wording is like prohibited from using or holding their personal electronic devices during the school day, either at school or during school-sponsored activities. So
Ooh, that one's tough
So even
because
clubs after
during the school day.
The school
Again,
sponsors
I-
activities
and
usage of
I
it,
hear you,
yeah.
Tom, but I'm like, you are trying to be proactive
Yeah.
to what the state is about to
Yeah.
tell us
Yeah.
Yeah.
we're doing.
It's
So
coming
it's a
in,
question
yeah.
of,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's passed massively in both, it's just
so,
not
but
specifics.
if it's school sponsored, that means that you're policing students traveling abroad.
No,
That's
no.
a school sponsored activity, you know, so there's
That
a fine
language
line.
may change
Yeah, I
as
know.
well.
I mean, you
Right,
could
but-
say
so-
on school grounds.
That's
I-
true.
Or
Yeah.
when
I
it's a
just-
field
right?
trip.
I would tell you, the number of people who didn't, I mean, nobody wanted the students bringing cell phones on field trips. So I mean, like, yeah, that's kind of the whole.
I just feel like teenagers push the envelope, so
They do.
adding a little bit of a, like,
Oh, yeah.
caveat to what in school means, that it truly, like, I can see a teenager being like, but I'm on my, like, I'm in the cafeteria, it's like, I'm not in a classroom, I have a DLT, and there's no teacher here, and there's not even a substitute, and I'm just sitting here by myself, it might be worth adding a
Move on.
comma, this is what this means, bell to bell, this means.
Yeah. Is there anything else, just again, conscious of time, is there anything else in the handbook, Dan, that you'd
Just
like to highlight?
what Jessica had mentioned, you know, we did add language about deep fake images
Yes.
for AI. Now, proposal number 11, it's really, that's something, it's not something to change in our handbook because it's a school committee policy, but it's something to bring to your attention that we kind of keep running into issues with posting photos of students and how they're posted and how they're shared out and, you know, social media, and it's, I think. there's-
Kicking it back to us is what you're saying, giving us homework, thanks.
I think we
Thanks,
just,
Dan.
there's some more guidance in
No
that
problem.
area.
That's totally appropriate.
Absolutely.
And
So proposal 11 is just to send to you guys. And then we just updated proposal 12 is just the new strategic improvement plan and, the W that we'll be using, so.
The only, sorry, just the last thing I just wanted to say, and I know you mentioned this, but just so that it doesn't become another thing on teachers' plate, I really appreciate that you're thinking through a clear policy needs to
Yes.
be
And we have to be consistent.
standardized to say, so it's not this teacher's a bad guy, this teacher, or it's inconsistent. So I appreciate that you've already thought about that and will communicate that.
Yeah, and we hear that from our teachers. They all need to be on board,
Thank you.
with this.
Sorry, one last question about the personal devices. We're completely not BYOD then, at this point, right?
At this point, yeah, that's what it would be, because it's.
No, like today,
Yeah.
today.
We're not BYOD.
That no one
There
can
are-
bring their own device, okay. Because I'm going back a few years now when I had the choice to opt
Yeah.
out and provide my
Yeah.
own. Right.
Yeah, so there are BYOD things that students have been using them for, but we're gonna get back to Chromebooks and everything that goes with those.
No other questions with the handbook? We might move on to the the school improvement plan.
Okay, I will try to be as quick as I can. Progress updates, I will, we've done a lot of work with UDL development over this school year, as in addition to the previous school years. The collaborative data meetings, we're looking forward to those. That's something that NEASC has pointed out to us as an area of need, is a regular data review of educators to drive instruction and lessons and our curriculum documents and all those things. So that's something that we're looking forward to. Organizational structures, we got plenty of feedback on new school start times, most recently from my staff as well. I was curious to see how they're living it. Really quickly, about 25% were, neutral about it. I would say about 18% or so had a negative view, either slightly or significantly. And then the rest of that percentage was a favorable response, which is good.
Yeah.
I was very curious about that. And the impact, as far as students after school, the impact I think was minimal. That's what we gathered, and adding the time on the beginning of the school day does help. There's no question. We did a lot of work around program of studies this school year. I came and presented the whole thing. You all saw that. That was a lot of work. Lauren Clark, her team, the other administrators, the curriculum coordinators. We did go to students having a grade or teacher recommendation, which is a kind of a fundamental shift in how the program of study operates. If you get to objective number 3, promoting social and emotional well-being, we did work around implementing revised graduation policy, which actually is also objective 2. We did, like middle schools, our Wayfinder implementation was a little bit further behind the elementary schools. We really kicked it off in November. Same kind of things. We still have another, I think in the school improvement plan, I put the data around Wayfinder. It's not really great right now because there's a midpoint, and we haven't collected the end of the year. And also we're working with Wayfinder to extrapolate that data further.
Okay.
And so Mrs. Clark has a meeting with them coming up to how we can show that and represent that a little bit better. We have all the individual data of the students, but the showing it out it needs a little bit of work. So the one change for us was when we changed the DCAP across the board, extra time for students. That was a change. That's been going fine. We did a lot of work with assessment strategies. I called it the MassQ cohort, but it's the PEAK cohort. PEAK is part of MassQ, all these
It's part of
acronyms.
that,
But some of my educators at Westford Academy have been participating in that. Another nugget takeaway is around AI is there's no real research, like peer-reviewed real research around how AI improves learning and instruction. There are local
Too new.
success stories. It's still new.
Yeah.
And it takes some time to get that real research. So at the end of the day, we'll have position statements. We've had some success with our Tier 3 restorative practices. It's boots on the ground, been very successful. some difficult situations we've had, and with our trained facilitators, so that's been good. And then lastly, the objective number 4, there's a lot of things that we continue to do. Dean Murphy organized an open space committee meeting with our students in the town for some of their vision, so that was something we accomplished this year. That was they were really excited to have our student voice on that. Okay, so those are the updates. And there are other updates, but I'm just moving along. Okay?
Appreciate you.
No,
Okay,
perfect.
so we get to the school improvement plan for next year. I'll tell you right now, under goal 1, 1.1 is the same as the middle school.
Yeah.
Okay? Most of 1.2 is the same of the middle school. The only change under that, because Adam and Alice and I, we met and we talked about our school improvement plans to, make sure that we were thinking the same things. An emphasis on our co-teaching models and supporting those educators with professional development. We have co-teaching in varieties of forms, but we can do better. And that starts with our scheduling right now for next year, and that's already underway. So that's one big one there. Goal 2. A lot of conversation came about under our program of studies around weighted and unweighted GPA. That is a whole nother conversation. We'll keep working on that. Something I've been saying for years is year 1 was graduation requirements. Year 2 was our program of studies. Year 3 is our schedule. Desi, Courtney Moran shared with something today that Desi is having their own type of PD around flex blocks, advisory blocks, and what are the pros and cons of each. Like, we have an advisory program, but there's something there for us to grow into. And, we still, like anything, we came out of COVID, we went from 6 classes a day to 5 classes a day. We want to make sure that this is still the best model as things
Is
are.
that also watched over too by NEASC as well? Some of that,
Correct.
the flex, yeah.
Yeah, it is. And NEASC has that piece of it. And, our advisory program has met that requirement, but we're always looking at it.
Same issues around. Yep.
Yeah. Technology, very similar, we're going to assess all of our technology, and then it relates to 3.4 in the SDIP, which make some recommendations around it, so we're going to continue to do that research. Something that I didn't put in here, because I feel like we've done a lot of work, is the vision of the learner, but it falls in this area, in the middle schools, and I think in the elementary schools, they need to do some of that work before then I can revisit my vision of the learner as a group. Goal 3, under mental health and wellness, that's the phone-free, the big one is the phone-free school day in alignment with state legislation. Away points, effectively implementing that with fidelity in our advisory program. We had our advisory teachers self-select what advisory activities that they were doing that would meet grade 9, 10, 11, and 12. And now we need to make sure we do that. But also with the survey of the beginning, the middle, and the end of the school year. It's interesting, you can track that. The #1 user of our waypoints is actually a business teacher who has found some amazing things and has incorporated it into their class.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's a wonderful tool that I think it meets a need for some of our social emotional needs in our programming. And then the last one, I kept it short on mine, on communication, on, the 3.5, 2.5, 1.5. Our restorative, we just need to do a better job of communicating what our restorative practices are, how they operate. When there are discipline issues that we're dealing with, sometimes we talk about, this is what we'd like to try, a restorative practice. We spend more time explaining what it is, where I feel like if we did a little bit more of a proactive approach of what it is, then we would get to a point of people being open to it and then allowing us to conduct what we need to do with our restorative practices.
So you mean specifically families kind of
Yes.
understanding it?
Yeah, families and students
Yeah.
also.
And I can say actually, like CPAC, that's something they've kind of advocated as well, that restorative practices, the UDL, having more of that kind of parent learning around those would be really helpful. So maybe there's something that can be done there. Awesome. Any questions for for Dan on those. Just before we take a vote then on these, I just wanted to double check then, Valerie, I know you had suggested that that language back on the handbook was regarding the images, that it said like all staff and students.
Students and staff.
Just did, but yes,
But no, but for, do we want to do that
Yes.
at the
yeah, I think it's
high
need to
school
add
handbook as
staff.
well, to just add the staff? Because I just
Yes,
want to note that in
absolutely.
the motion as well.
Use of another student's, or staff.
Yeah.
Right, image, photo, likeness, or generated image without permission.
Yeah,
Yeah.
perfect, okay. So, I'll take a motion to approve the WA handbook and school improvement plan
As
with
amended.
the as amended.
So moved.
Thanks, Bill. A second? Shayna, all in favour? Awesome. There you go. All done.
Thank you.
Just a moment to say thank you to our three principals. We know you're getting to the end of the year. It's always a long year, but we appreciate the fact that you come to these meetings when we're all tired and late in the evening.
Appreciate you listening.
It does not go unappreciated or unnoticed, so thank
Thank
you
you.
very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So I'm gonna move us to our 8:10 agenda item, the Westford Health Insurance Review. And so while I'm gonna give Val a minute or two to bring Pat Harden in, the Lockton consultant, to just remind us all where this is kind of stemmed from. The Budget Task Force had identified a number of years ago some various areas that this district could look at, I should say the town could look at, in terms of efficiencies that could be found and cost savings. And one of the areas that they are looking at is the health insurance that the town offers to all town employees, including obviously our school staff. And so they reached out to Lockton Consultants, and Pat has already been briefly with us as well at the Tri-Board meeting, to kind of just really have a benchmark of everything that we're doing, or that we're currently offering, and then having a look at options out there. What we are being tasked with tonight, and I think just to kind of clarify, the Select Board are looking for recommendations or guidance from School Committee and the Finance Committee, so that the Select Board can then go to the Healthcare Trust and say, the Tri-Boards in town, we've looked at this, these are our kind of feelings, thoughts, and kind of this is the guidance we're giving the Healthcare Trust to kind of proceed with the next action items as we take steps in this. We don't actually have to vote on this tonight. I have clarified that with Chris Barrett, who's the new chair of the Select Board. If we feel that we don't have a kind of consensus or we need more time, I certainly, even 10 years living in the US, still feel health insurance, I need a PhD in it to understand.
is there a point where we do need a vote?
By our next June 1st.
Which is next
meeting,
Monday.
which is next Monday. So the Select Board need a recommendation by the time they meet on June 8th or 9th.
We're just
I mean-
fabricating our own
So-
recommendation and voting on it?
Yes.
As I say, it's more of a recommendation than a vote, right? Because
Yeah.
technically speaking, this board doesn't hold power over that.
Yes,
Right,
100%.
okay, Just to be clear.
Yeah.
Just like an article at town meeting where it's a recommendation.
It's a recommendation. And the other point is that, and maybe Pat can speak a bit about it as well, is that we don't necessarily have to pigeonhole ourselves into one area or solution. There is a suggestion at the moment that we could consider maybe asking the Healthcare Trust to kind of see if their savings can be found within our own self-insured plan, while kind of still starting the GIC potentially process, to kind of give us a two-pronged approach. I know it's a very complicated topic. I know we've been asking a lot of questions this week. And I don't doubt we have more for Pat. So first of all, Pat, thank you. I hope you can hear us okay.
Yes, I can, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much for that. So I don't know, Pat, if there's anything that I kind of missed in just that kind of where you came into the picture and the kind of work you've done, to just kind of remind us as to what your charge was to look at in the report and the information you've come up with and provided us with.
Yes, no, thank you, Madam Chair. So briefly, our charge was to evaluate and come up with some, I guess, options for the Health Trust to consider with input from obviously the school committee, the selectmen, and the finance committee. So that's what we did. I'm sure you've seen and hopefully read through the voluminous report, but basically it comes down to, do you want to continue to offer a plan through the town and look at some savings opportunities there, or do you want to go to a purchasing group, and the one that in our review would generate the most savings with all the caveats listed in terms of the impact on members was the group insurance commission. So it's basically, your decision is stay with your current plans, make some changes, use some savings to try and offset cost, or look at joining a larger purchasing group to gain those economies.
Perfect. Thank you for that, Pat. Does anyone have any questions that they feel they need clarification on?
I have
Jeff?
a question first of all, thank you for sharing the link to the FinCom meeting. That was really helpful.
Yeah.
And I think during that meeting it was discussed that, so first of all, Pat, can I clarify that I'm using the term correctly? So when you say a benchmark plan, is that a GIC style plan, or is that a benchmark to our local communities? Or either?
Madam Chair, may I respond?
Yes, and please, Pat, you don't need to ask permission to speak up. I'm
I know,
Irish,
it's
we
late.
interrupt
It's
all the
late.
time. So jump in anytime.
No, so I apologize for that. So a benchmark plan actually has a definition in the statute.
Okay.
So the benchmark plan simply means the plan design, which means the co-payments, deductibles, and out-of-pockets of the most subscribed plan in the GIC, which is currently the Harvard Pilgrim Explorer for the actives and non-Medicare, and the WellPoint Medicare extension for Medicare retirees. So when we say benchmark in this context, it simply means moving the town's plan, if you will, to those out-of-pocket levels, but staying within the town's Blue Cross plan, if that makes sense.
Yes, it did. Now you're jogging my memory from that. Okay, because I think you said that in that meeting. So if I remember, I think that you said that was essentially well, you didn't make a judgment, but what I heard was that would essentially be a negative because we would still retain the risk without becoming part of the GIC. Am I remembering that correctly?
Yep, partially, yes. What the difference between those two options are, obviously, the cost, if you will, from an out-of-pocket perspective would be similar in the town's plan with those changes and the GIC. The element that's missing is the guarantee of the actual savings on the premium side. So because the town is self-insured through the trust, any changes you make, you're going to base that on a projection of what you think the savings is going to be. If people are going to change behavior because they have to pay more out of pocket, whereas if you go into the GIC, it's treated like a premium plan, so you're going to get those premium savings right away, regardless of what the members ultimately do with out-of-pocket costs. So it's the guarantee of the savings, even though they're both estimates, because we still don't know where people would go, what plans they would enroll in. But that's the difference between the two, if that makes sense.
It does, yeah. And so my last question then, Catherine, is for you. Yeah. So with Chris's sort of two-pronged approach that he had, mentioned, I think, would we be looking to potentially make so in one scenario, we potentially look to make changes to our existing offerings to try to find savings, right?
I believe so, yes, that's my understanding, but actually, funny enough, that's one of the questions I wanted to clarify with
Okay,
Pat tonight
'cause
too,
I was
but
gonna-
yes.
I wanted to ask if that had, if that was meaning looking at this sort of benchmark scenario or entertaining a variety of potential cost-saving options.
I think it's giving the healthcare trust the kind of action item to find savings through various whatever methods needed, be it plan redesign or whatever. But this is actually the one thing I wanted to clarify with Pat, that if we could make savings on our plans for the town. But actually, I might just piggyback on that, Jess. Pat, you mentioned in the FinCom meeting, and forgive me, I didn't get a chance to go back and listen to it to clarify, and again, health insurance 101 here. So I thought you had mentioned, because I was kind of thinking this would be great, that, you know, if we can potentially keep our own health insurance as we currently have of self-funded, and that we can just potentially redesign the plans or offerings. And then I thought I heard you say in the meeting last week something about how it doesn't necessarily save you money because it's the same pot, you're just kind of rejigging it. And forgive me if I've completely taken that up the wrong way, but I'm just trying to understand, is there the ability for our self-funded health insurance to actually find cost savings, both for the town and at the very least maintain the current levels of like co-pays, deductibles, or potential savings for our users?
Okay, so I think there are 3 questions.
Okay.
Yeah, Catherine.
Thanks.
So the first one is, yes, you can look for savings in the current plans. And again, just remember, your current plans renew in November. Mm-hmm. So from a fiscal year perspective, you're looking at, 8/12 of a fiscal year from a timing perspective. And obviously, if the powers that be decide that looking at the GIC, that's an FY 28 kind of timing piece. So just keep those 2 things in the back of your mind as you talk about budgets. But you cannot, in order to generate savings, you have to do one of 3 things. You have to cover fewer people, you have to cover less things, or the members have to pay more to access those services. So unfortunately, in the self-insured world where you are, there are tremendous advantages, and the town should be self-insured. But the downfall of being self-insured is whatever you're doing, and again, I'm going to use round numbers because it's late. Let's say it's $20 million of claims. You're still going to have the $20 million of claims, and if you move it into a benchmark type plan, theoretically, again, not exactly, but theoretically, all you're doing is you're having the members who incurred those claims pay more of that total. So they're going to get a slightly less premium for that. And obviously the people that don't use the plan are going to win, and the people who use the plan the most are going to lose from a dollars perspective. And then you're going to get a slight behavior change. People are going to think twice about going to the emergency room. You're going to get those behavior changes, but it's not guaranteed. You're going to come up, the trust will come up with a rate, just like it does today, based on a projection of what the costs should be. But again, just like with the GLP-1 issue, we don't really know what the costs are going to be. So the savings, that get banked may disappear in the following year. So I don't want to say there's no savings. I think we modeled out it could be $500,000 of savings to move to the benchmark. But again, that's based on, certain behavior changes. And the other thing, back of your minds, it's based on the same number of people in the plans. Mm-hmm. So if you remember when we talked about making the plans less expensive is going to attract more people, and every additional person on the plan, you've got about 42 to 44% of the people that don't enroll in the town's plans, you get 3 or 4 of those that come on and their families, your savings may erode.
Thanks, Shayna?
We were talking about the potential savings of switching to the GIC was somewhere around 3 million, like 2/3 to the town, 1/3 to the users approximately. Did that 2 million and change dollars that potentially could be saved, did that take into account the 25% buffer we're potentially putting into the users to help bridge the gap from the plans? Or is that 2 million gonna go down
It's minus, like, are you
minus
saying
the
is it
25% that we're gonna put in flex spending accounts or whatever the decision might be?
Yes, sorry, I couldn't see who asked that. I apologize. But yes, the total is the total before any of those mitigation funds. So regardless of what you do, if you do it on the town's plans or the GIC plans, you have to put in place a mitigation fund, which theoretically is usually 25% of the total savings, and that would come off the town side of the savings. So you take that, again, it's like 62-38, something like that. So that 62%, the 25% would come out of the town's piece of the savings. And that's only based on the first year savings. You don't do that every year. It's just it's a one-time
So it's
calculation, even though the dollars may last longer than a year.
All right, so that was my follow-up clarification. So
Yeah.
potentially it would be a smaller savings the first year with hopefully a little bit of a larger savings going forward. And that could depend whether
yes,
we do
that's
it
the
in-house
theory.
versus GIC.
Yeah, that's the theory, and that the first year savings, because you're going to help mitigate the transition to any plan, whether it's benchmark on the town side or GIC. And just remember, the other caveat to always think about is we're sitting here in May thinking about what the GIC may do for 7/1 of 27. So we don't know, when this analysis is done again, we'll have to look at what the GIC is running for a deficit at that time to see, again, the savings was based on a theoretical FY27. So a theoretical FY28 may look slightly different. Like, for example, if the town, has a smaller increase and the GIC has a larger increase, then the savings goes down and vice versa. So keep that in mind too, in that you're always going to be blind because the decision has to be made by the trust prior to knowing what the rates are going to be for the GIC, if that is the option.
Sorry, I want to follow. In your conversations or whatever you've had with the select board, with Chris, this kind of two-pronged approach, is there some benchmark amount of money that we would want to see, in a recommendation? Like if we go back to the trust to review cuts, like are we looking for them to be equitable to what, or are they going to come back and be able to say, we found $250,000 worth of savings versus the 3 million we might find in GIC, and then we would say, well, that's not enough, or not we, but like maybe the collective tri-board, and then ultimately the select board.
We haven't hit on a specific number, and I don't necessarily know if that's like school committee's kind of place, but I think it's just more the ongoing conversation. Do we at least want to see, have them have a look at it and then come back? But I think that's a conversation between then select board and the healthcare trust, I suppose, because select board oversee the entire budget.
Totally.
Yeah.
So,
Tom? Yeah.
the way I'm kind of understanding GIC is it is a failing business model. It relies on the legislature to subsidize at the end of the year, make up the deficit. So, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think this is a risk reward. The reward would be great at $3 million, right? But there's a risk that the legislature could turn around to the GIC and say, no, you need to actually charge appropriate rates, and we could be right back at the same number without any control. Is that about correct?
Yes, Tom, were you asking me, Tom? I'm sorry.
Yeah, you're the expert in the room, so I'll ask you that, yes.
Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not, I have no
Yeah.
clue.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, yes, that's the, I mean, if you looked at, again, the risks of all of these, that is a risk that if the GIC suddenly has to charge rates that fund its entire program for the year, those rates may be significantly higher, which may, in theory, wipe out a lot of the projected savings, if not all of it, depending on where people enroll. So that's the risk. And then obviously, again, new administration may come in and change the rules a bit. But yeah, that is the other thing to remember, and I think I mentioned this, is, this isn't something to take lightly. From a change perspective, even though it seems like it on paper. The initial commitment for the GIC is 3 years. So you're making a 3-year decision on, people's health insurance, right? Or a recommendation in your case, on people's health insurance. And even though it's a 3-year commitment, if they continue to do what they're doing, it's going to be longer than that, because once you're in, it's very difficult to get out, because your rates are not adequate. You're not paying your fair share, so it's hard to get out without an increased cost. So yes, that's a risk. And again, that's something that I don't think anyone knows what the GIC will do. Right. The state budget, as you know, through obviously you deal with it in Chapter 70. It's very, even though it's a formula, it varies and depends on, how good the state budget is doing at a given time.
I think the other thing that it still weighs on me is the concept of forcing some of our employees off of our insurance, and that would be part of the savings, because some of our employees are out of state, and it's not reasonable to ask them to change doctors to come into Massachusetts to be in network. So that's still going to be a concern of mine.
Is that, just to clarify, so if we
Yeah.
go with the GIC,
That's my
it
understanding.
doesn't cover any, like for New Hampshire staff members who are resident there?
Is that correct, that they don't have New Hampshire doctors and
Be
things?
eligible for 3 plans in the GIC, but those are in mass network, Pat?
So the folks you have employees and don't forget your non-Medicare retirees as well. You've got people in Maine, New Hampshire, maybe one in Vermont. They have 3 plans that they are eligible for, and they all have their own networks. So
Okay.
it's not that they would have to change doctors. The doctor may not be in that plan's network, because remember, Blue Cross is not in the GIC. It's Harvard, Unicare, and Harvard and WellPoint are the plans that they're eligible for. So it would have to be, the providers would have to be in those networks of those 3 plans, so they wouldn't have to change networks. But they are limited in that they only have 3 plans if they don't live in Mass.
Yeah. So it's something that weighs on me to put that. And that all being said, that I understand that we need to find ways of saving money in the budget, right? I want to make sure that we are very careful about something that does have an impact. And the fact that, it was raised by FinCom members that our insurance is part of our overall compensation. If we make significant changes to our insurance, we're likely to see requests for the compensation to go up as well at some point.
Well, yes, but, because we don't bargain, we bargain the insurance all in one.
Right, and I understand that, but if that is the message that is being put out, that the really good insurance is part of our compensation, and we reduce that, there is a leg to stand on.
I don't know
think.
if it's being framed as part of
No,
our
but-
compensation, so.
some members have stated it
And
as,
there's-
yeah.
It's less than half opt-in, though,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
I mean,
just-
I guess I was just gonna say too that, like, yes, that human impact is worth obviously taking very seriously, but there's another piece of the impact, which is any expense that grows more than our budget grows is thereby impacting in a reduction or in a tightening of a budget somewhere else. So, I mean, it's hard to balance, but it's just worth saying.
Can I just come back to Catherine's question? Pat, you've referred to our health insurance as a Cadillac plan. So I was just curious when she asked if it was possible to find savings there. You know, if we bring it down to like a Chevy or something, like, are we, you know, is that possible to find enough savings, or is that already included in the answer that you gave her?
Yeah, and I hope I didn't say Cadillac, because there's probably a lot of cars out there that cost more than a Cadillac. But no, your plan is generous from the benchmarking, different small B benchmarking that we did compared to those other communities. But yes, you can find savings not only in the plan by changing some of the aspects of the plan. Obviously, you know, the trust has discretion to use some of the excess trust balance to reduce future premiums. So there are ways there to do that. We just kind of put out the gross numbers of savings, and there's probably, you know, it's a multi-step approach to get there. But again, we weren't given a target or a number. We just said, go out there and see what is out there to achieve savings while maintaining, you know, again, the quality and the access that you currently have, which again is very good because you've got a plan that pretty much has the broadest network and has you know, the most doctors and hospitals in Massachusetts, and it's available in New England. So it's a very good plan, but there's still some opportunity for savings there. Not as much, obviously, as a joint purchase group.
And Pat, when you talk about the savings there, I know there was a question about like the stop loss insurance and increasing that. So is that an extra saving on top of what we could save if we kind of tweaked our plans? So you potentially said maybe there's like, you know, $500,000 savings on tweaking the plans, but then there's is that an extra, that stop loss by increasing from the 150 to the 200,000, that's additional savings then that we could also make if we made that switch?
Yes, so to clarify, that's a
Yeah.
different question than I think
Yeah.
someone else had asked. So
Yeah.
the stop loss premium, for those who don't know, that's basically the town has to buy an insurance policy to protect it from very large claims. I believe the limit is 150,000 per member. So the way we did it is if you kept everything the same and just changed the out-of-pocket costs, co-pays, deductibles, et cetera, that's where about the 500 comes in. There are other savings that you could do, like you could increase the stop loss deductible from whatever it is, 150 to 200 or 175. That's going to give you a lower premium, so it will lower your overall premium rate. However, you're going to take on additional risk that the trust would have to assess in making the rate determination for that. But yes, there are, you know, again, there's probably, you know, 3 to 4 different levers you can pull. There's administration savings, there's savings on the broker, there's savings on the stop loss. These are all little things that will add up. But yeah, we, on the analysis piece, we assumed the status quo to not make it complicated.
Perfect. No, appreciate that. Any other questions, clarifications, nuggets of clarity?
So I think my last comment is that I think we need to do something because use term catalog, use whatever you want. I think we do have a really good plan here in town, and our residents are seeing high deductible plans. So from the optics standpoint, I think that that's a challenge, you know, for residents to say, well, you have great insurance and it's costing us this, and that's why we can't afford X, Y, or Z, whatever they might want to say. I worry about going to the extreme. I think there's value in seeking what the benchmark savings would be in our current plan. Pat has said several times a community our size should be self-insured. And it wasn't long ago that we were told that this was the best thing, and that's why we approved the self-insured model. And I've also heard that we're at healthy levels of our reserve and things like our trust. So adjustments definitely need to be made. I just don't know if jumping all the way to GIC is the right first step.
So I think if we don't have any more questions or thoughts, the question is really, are we ready to consider a recommendation tonight? Or do you want to take this away, have some thoughts about it yourselves, process, you know, and then at our next meeting next Monday, June 1st, we would bring it back to just kind of say, okay, as a group, what is the kind of guidance recommendation we'd like to send to select board on this topic?
And it's just a process
Yeah.
question. So if we voted to say, yes, go find some savings in our existing plan, that doesn't mean that we're voting that we approve whatever savings they found, right? We could
Yeah.
still be like, that's horrible, don't do that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
But in Jess's scenario, do we even have that voice?
Right.
Like, that's horrible, don't do that? So
We
I'm
can't-
very confused on like how
Yeah, the select
got
board.
wedged in
Yeah,
to
the
this.
select board makes a final decision, so you
On
wouldn't
the
necessarily get a
impact of their
chance to,
recommendation.
Oh, so
they
they
might
could be
ask
like,
you again.
HDAPs across the board, we're all done, and we
Yeah.
could be like, no, but
It-
we don't get to vote.
It seems
Okay.
like it's quite a gamble either way, really. So,
There's no perfect solution.
no. And I feel like for a town for a school district that cares about their employees, I think we should consider what's really in their best interest, which would maybe be to not make a drastic change, going to a situation that might not even have any cost savings.
So have we gotten a formal recommendation from the Insurance Advisory Committee, or is that still kind of, there's been no, I mean, I think we need, I mean, to me, like, if there hasn't been a
the
lot
I-
of chatter on that end, I mean, there's two separate entities, right? The Insurance Advisory Committee would be the one that's putting forth the recommendation. The Public Employee Committee would be the one in negotiations further down the road. But we haven't even gotten a recommendation from the IAC.
So I think they're part of the process now.
Okay.
Like, we just got the reports and the conversation has just started, and so I think it's just, select board would like to get an idea of what school committee are thinking as they have these conversations with the various groups.
It sounds to me, Bill, and maybe I'm wrong, but that the IAC needs a direction from the select board to come back with a recommendation of some sort. And that's what the select board's asking us
That's
for
the
some
trust.
point. A trust?
That's the
Okay.
trust, yeah.
So there's, I think, three different entities here.
There's a third entity that we're all
The
confused about.
Insurance Trust, which oversees the
The money.
Full money.
Yeah.
right.
In the
The
plans.
Insurance Advisory Committee is made up of
I think
various
this is-
stakeholders, right?
Yeah, like union reps, like heads.
Yeah,
Right.
employees and
Yeah.
and whatnot. And then I'm not even sure the
Public Employee
So
Committee.
you're asking if the committee had any opinion that they've offered,
The Advisory
basically?
Committee.
The advisory
You know,
committee.
the initial,
I think they're just getting the information now and having the conversations too with town members. So,
Are town members weighing in on this as well?
well, they would be because, no, as in when you say town members, we're talking about like town employees
Right.
and, yeah, as opposed to just community members.
Yes,
Yeah.
our
Yeah.
employees weighing in on
Yeah.
it. Okay.
Yeah, it would be.
So can we put forward a I mean, because we don't get to vote anyway, so can we put forward a recommendation that says, you know, hey, go investigate savings, but we do not support these, you know, outcomes or something, you know, of your savings findings?
Yeah. That's probably getting very specific.
I
when
know,
we-
but
yeah,
for example,
yeah,
like
yeah,
I
yeah.
would in no way support having only HD/HP plans. I've been in that situation. It's awful. So if they said this is how we're going to get the most savings, you
Yeah.
know, that to me would not be an acceptable solution. So like, are there any caveats like that we might?
I think
wanna
there's a way we can put in language that what would be kind of similar to benchmark plans, or I don't know if exactly off the top of my head how we could phrase it, but that maybe we create some language that kind of alludes to the type of plans you'd be looking for without going into specifics. Shayna?
It seems like it would be helpful to have a week to consider the language that we're going to use for the recommendation.
Would it be helpful then if I kind of took into account the conversations we've had tonight and try and create some sort of language to share with everybody that you can all then kind of email individually or
Yeah.
have a conversation to just see if that's helpful, that we have something a little bit more tangible to consider next week?
I would be comfortable with that.
I wonder, Jess, if it's just like a change to the current plans that don't create significant hardship, you know, or something that would just like be a little bit higher level than like,
Yeah.
I hear ya.
than like
Yeah.
this,
I'm
and
sure
this.
there's good wordsmithing.
But I suppose the other question then, Shayna, though, is if we're not seeing those savings, are we recommending we have
Well,
to
I was
look at the
gonna-
GIC, or is
I
that
was gonna
is that
pose
an
that
option?
to the
Yeah.
group next. I feel like we seem to have a
Yeah.
somewhat consensus that doing nothing is not an answer,
Yeah.
right? And from what I understand, and Pat's not here to necessarily give his firm recommendation, but it sounds like the best second option to finding significant savings in our current setup is the GIC. That's the second best option to find savings, from what I
However,
understood.
Didn't he say last time that the towns that do go into the GIC program tend to want to get out of them in a few years?
No, only some.
No. Pat, do you want to clarify that?
Yeah.
Just on towns leaving the GIC, what has been the experience of towns who've gone into it and either are still there or are leaving?
Yeah, so the biggest community to leave was Quincy, and that was in 2019. There have not been many that have left. A couple of small ones have left. But the primary reason that the communities leave or want to look at leaving is to regain control of their program. Because as you saw this year, the GIC was going to recommended changing their co-payments and deductibles to a higher level than what they were. They've been at the same level for a while. And the communities have a program in place to reimburse some of those co-payments. And, you know, they were letting sort of the GIC sort of dictate what their cost would be, or what, you know, increase their cost. So they were looking for some reasons. They were looking to leave for those reasons because they wanted to regain control. It's always going to cost the community more to leave because, again, remember, for the most part, they're not paying the correct rates when they're in there. So if you're getting a discounted rate, it's very hard to come out and get a better rate unless you want to be self-insured and take the risk again. But most don't because they want that certainty that they enjoyed while they were in the GIC. So that's why they come out. And it's been a while. These are communities that have been in there 10, 12 years or so looking to get out.
Does
Yeah,
that help?
thank you. Yeah.
Any other thoughts or questions, or can we leave Mr. Harrison end his workday?
Yes.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
Yeah.
the one thing I will say, since you are going to, you know, have some deliberations, if the committee has questions, just like the Finance Committee and if you want to send them to Kristen and then she can get them to me and I can respond.
Yeah.
That would be, I think it would help you. Again, this is an important decision. I don't want you to make it without having all your questions answered, and sometimes they're not as apparent until you start talking. So happy to do that. If you just want to, rather than, getting a blizzard of them, if you can just filter them through Kristen, that would be helpful. And I usually respond if I'm not in a physical meeting within an hour. So I'll make that commitment to you. If I get a question, I'll respond to it that day, and usually in a couple of hours.
Super. No, we really appreciate that, Pat. Kristen has been sharing us lots of information that I know you've been kind of answering questions for Finance Committee and stuff, so I've been sharing all of that with School Committee as well, but we really appreciate your help and time on this very complex decision.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We'll leave you go, Pat. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Right.
Bye.
So I think the kind of the consensus I'm getting, at least on the self-insured component of it, is that it feels like we're all kind of feeling like at least looking at potential savings, tweaking, adjustments is definitely something we're all kind of supporting. And it's the GIC component, I think we're all still a little bit of a question mark over. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Bet you enjoyed that conversation. I will take that on board, create some sort of email and follow up with you guys tomorrow.
Thank you.
Superintendent goals are 8:40. We're
Right.
just half hour behind.
Sorry.
So at the risk of honestly pushing through here, I've already shared the self-reflection and evidence document with you, shared it with you last week. I shared it with the subcommittee even earlier. So originally, as I've been saying, I'm grateful to the subcommittee for the work that they've been sharing. The feedback has been helpful. I've used the same format that we have found successful from feedback that you've been giving me. Having it all in one document has been helpful. I do have a slide deck that can just kind of talk through quickly some of the progress in general. I'm hoping that you'll find everything that you need in there. I will say, if you have any questions, feel free to ask, because there might be something that made sense in a conversation, but not doing like a full presentation. There might be some questions there. In short, I will say, spoiler alert, my reflection, I believe that 2 of the goals have been met, and 2 of the goals we've made significant progress on. So specifically, goals 2 and 4, I believe, have been and or will be met. And we'll kind of dive into that. But 1 and 3, I think we've made significant progress on. So if we look at the slide deck, I won't read through the document. Sorry.
I thought we were. Yep. Give me a
And
second.
while Val pulls that up, I suppose it might also help for all of our school committee members to just kind of frame your mind in that it's helpful as Dr. Chu's going through these goals that this kind of kicks off the evaluation that we do at the end currently of every year. And at the moment, I think Bill, who's been chairing the Superintendent Evaluation Committee, is going to kind of take lead point on those collating our individual evaluations, because we do formally give one cohesive evaluation. And so just to bear in mind that at the moment we're kind of looking at a June 6th deadline for our individual evaluations, so that Bill can kind of get it to us then for our last meeting on June 15th. We're kind of doing earlier meetings in June this year, so kind of shifted that way. So kind of bearing in mind, and again as well for Shayna and Jess, first year in terms of doing that, we're here to help. There's rubrics. We've streamlined the process, I think, pretty well at this point. So and hopefully it's easy enough and not the mammoth task that I think it was 5 years ago when we kind of redid the whole thing. So, Dr. Chu, if you want to walk through kind of your
Sure, so
evidence there and-
what I have here is just the slide deck that, I use the exact same slide deck that I used in, earlier when we did the mid-cycle review. So what I did is just as I bolded any updated bullets, right? I did actually go through and change things that were present tense to past tense. I tried to catch all that, but if you'll see the difference that we're looking at now is that we have had the recommendations from the science curriculum pilot that was shared with you already in April, and that kind of falls under this first professional practice goal around the curriculum council and the work that we're doing to have vertical and horizontal alignment. And I think that speaks to the curriculum review cycle, which has been a big piece of this, and that has been developed. They're actually just putting the finishing touches on it. I have a link in there, but the link is actually going to their draft. So they're meeting tomorrow. We're going to look at it, and then I'll update that to make sure that you have access to that document. But that's really a big piece there. So then the second,
Can I just
yeah,
ask clarification? AAC and PLC, can you?
yeah, the AAC, the PLC is a professional learning community.
Okay.
So thank you. I
Thank
didn't
you.
spell that out, and I have been better at that
Yep.
in a lot of things. But no, I have. A PLC is a professional learning community. AAC is one that has been in this district for a long time, and it's the Academic Advisory Council. Is that what we landed on? Because no one had actually used it.
remember.
So like we've checked a couple of times.
Okay.
Because we were all like, wait, what is that? So it's Academic Advisory Council. It's the full elementary leadership team. So it's the principals, assistant principals, and curriculum coordinators for the elementary. We do the same thing for 6 through 12. So it's breaking the full leadership into smaller groups.
So here's your chance to put a lasting mark on the district and spell it out in
Spell
a
it out.
presentation.
Good.
And
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, that's true.
That'll be where it'll be going forward.
Yeah.
So thank you.
What was your question?
I just quickly asked if there's any head teachers or something in that group.
The AAC.
No,
I mean, our
just
curriculum coordinators
Yeah.
would be there, but we actually don't have head teachers.
Right, right.
So, yeah.
Okay.
So then the second goal is, again, focusing on our student ability to, the students' understanding of the strategies that we've been implementing. And so we talked a lot about this, about what an age-appropriate survey would look like, and we feel like we have a good sense for 6 through 12 and 3 to 5. K to 2, we're still not really sure the best way to collect that. And the whole point being is that, again, for all of these surveys, it's been the teachers reporting their perception of the students. And so it's just asking the teachers to do one more thing. So we might not have that K to 2 data still, but we're still looking at it. You've seen how the principals have been including the 2 bullet points there at the bottom. They've really been including that SEL data, talking about the waypoints, which is the wayfinder piece. And I feel like you've heard that over the last 2 meetings just with the school improvement plan. So I feel confident that that's just going to become even stronger as we continue through. So that's why this goal is not really met, but we're making this one will be met, sorry, because we will have done the student survey by the end of the year. By June is what it actually says. And when I start looking at this in April, I start feeling like, oh, but then it actually says June. So we'll make that. So then the third goal was the work that we've been talking about, the report card committee and assessing how student progress is communicated. So you heard a lot of that in the school improvement plans, the work that they've been doing. The big pieces here, it talks about that they've referenced that with the potential rollout for a new report card and or other progress reports in FY28 after they get more feedback, and that really goes the same for the middle schools. Then the fact that we have completed year 3 of our 7-year implementation of universal design for learning. So those are pieces that are big here, but I think we still have work to do there. And then fourth goal was focusing on the strategic district improvement plan. And so you're all aware that you approved that back in April 27th. So all of that work that kind of folded into that. And then the other 2 slides are highlighting what those performance standards are. So now, if what you will see in the document that I've shared with you is an initial introduction that talks about the overall process, and then with each goal, I've put a narrative paragraph that talks about that work, and then then I have a table that has all of the standards that also has a self-reflection as to my ability to meet those standards, and then there'll be the listed evidence is actually there, as opposed to under the goals section. I put all the evidence just in that one spot. And as you remember from the very beginning, the standards that we identified align with the goals. So it really is, if you're working on these things, then you should be able to do those things together. So that's maybe the fastest that I've ever kind of shared this information with you.
Brilliantly done.
So important to note that Dr. Chu outlined 6 of those indicators across the four standard areas. When we evaluate, we're going to be evaluating on those 6 indicators. All right, it won't be every indicator that's listed on there, each standard. That's way too much. And then we'll also be looking at those 4 goals: the student learning goal, the professional practice goal, and the 2 district improvement goals. Each evaluation will come together as a composite based on the ratings that are given.
Yeah.
And that will be presented as the final.
And you're going to share an individual copy for each of us.
So I will share an individual form with each of you that'll be shared. And then, as we asked, due by the end of the day, June 6th.
Yeah.
Gives me some time to put it together. Get fresh eyes and Lori and Jess right before we present it at the June 15th meeting.
Yep.
And at that point, it will be the composite evaluation. Yep.
And at that point, you know, we typically kind of have all of them in the packets. They're all available as well, but that we only share, the official one. The official one is the one voice. Yeah.
Yep.
And I think the other thing to note then is that, you know, we're coming kind of to the end of what is now your 5th year as our superintendent. And I think when we started this whole process, we were trying to kind of reinvigorate the superintendent evaluation process as a school committee, but also support Dr. Chu as a brand spanking new superintendent. And I think kind of, you know, something for us to consider is that typically kind of more experienced superintendents, you know, the 5 years and plus experience, often run on a 2-year review cycle. And so that's something that maybe we could consider moving forward for next year with Dr. Chu, is that we would still, you know, set our goals essentially over the summer and the fall, but that what has been, I suppose, our mid-year review, which has been January, February, would really take place at this time of the year, with the following year being kind of this time 2 years, then would be the kind of the end of that evaluation cycle.
And just another point of note there, it's kind of consistent with just the entire educator evaluation process in the state, where experienced educators do shift to that 2-year cycle.
Yep.
So this reflects that. It reflects our trust in Dr. Chu, and
Is that something we have to vote on, or we just decide we're going to do that?
No, we
think
talked
it's-
about that in the committee, because we also talked about the fact that I'm saying, well, 2 of these goals really might continue, but I don't necessarily think that they would need to be continued for 3 years. So I think it'll be more a conversation we have when we establish those goals in the fall, right? That's when we can talk about it. And if everybody is in agreement at that moment in time, then I will be proposing 2-year goals.
Yeah, that's the
Or-
vote. That's
or
essentially the vote.
Worst
Yeah.
case scenario, if there was a short-term goal, you could say this is a 1-year goal, and we'll figure out another goal
We
for
could,
next
yeah.
year.
I was
right?
thinking if there are
Yeah.
ways that, because again, it's work that we want to be doing, it might be ways to
Right.
come up with something that allows you to continue
Yep.
that work, and it has benchmarks within that as, you know.
remember, in a 2-year cycle, Dr. Chu's formative, that mid-year update that really be the end of the first year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If he's hitting marks and going further,
Right.
like, there's nothing wrong with that,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
That's
You
right,
want
sure.
that.
Yeah.
So,
Saves us having to write an evaluation every year.
That'll be a 4 on the
So-
report card, right?
So, yeah, so it's,
Exceeds.
you know.
So I think that's something, if, you know, we can all kind of consider, and that essentially, I suppose, like, when we bring those goals in the fall, that would be the vote. We're kind of,
Right.
we're voting
Talk
on
about it at
that
that point.
timeline and stuff, but,
Yep.
so, I just thought this was a good point to note. Okay. Any questions?
So you're going to send us
So
a document?
tomorrow, you will each receive a individual shared Google document, just between me and you. You let me know when that
it's
evaluation's complete, and the sooner the better always, but by June 6th, you know, for those
But
who
with
like
AI
the
tools, you
11th
should be
hour
able
like
to-
myself. And, yeah, the composite will be ready for June 15th.
Sorry.
Did I made this up because I was like 2 minutes on this committee this time last year, but wasn't there like a folder with some guidance, guidelines and
Yes,
things too?
there'll be guidelines
Will you
that'll-
relink that to us?
It's in the Superintendent Evaluation Committee folder.
Just if you
Can you relink?
share the link. to
It's,
it.
yeah, I'll send you the
In
link,
the
but
Google
it's in the
Drive.
shared.
I'm in the drive and
Yeah,
I'm
it's in the shared drive.
Get
feeling
lost in
like
the
I'm
back,
not-
You'll get it all.
Yeah.
Let's be-
And if you need somebody to like sit and walk you through it or whatever,
don't you
we can
worry, I know
totally
where
do
to
that.
find you.
There we go.
I
That's
mean, I
totally
sat,
fine.
Valerie did a really nice intro call last year and I sat in on it, but
Yeah, no problem
It was
at
a
all.
long time ago.
that was a long time ago. And I didn't know what I didn't know back then. so.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago that I did mine last year, so you're all good.
Super. Okay, I'm gonna move us along, guys, then. Just conscious of the time, we've 2 policy items on the agenda tonight. Our first one, which is just our policy discussion regarding our residency requirements that we put up in our last meeting for its first reading, and it's currently up for public comment, which is the P5115 and the P5104, the non-school choice. I can say as of now, we have no public comment received, and so I don't know.
Do we need to waive readings or?
No, for
Okay,
the
just-
discussion, no.
just making
You waive
sure.
reading for the first and second reading. So, I don't know if anybody has any questions. I know I haven't heard anything. Again, they're not major changing, it's just language updating, so.
Do we know how many non-school choice enrollees we currently have, students right now? Do we have any?
we've
Or what's the
had some-
volume of the non-school choice residents that we're like charging tuition for?
I don't think we're charging any.
Well, at times, it depends. At this moment, I don't know if there's any right now, but we've had that when folks are moving into town, but they're not actually
Here yet.
residents.
Or vice
yet.
versa.
Right.
That was the only question I had on
Okay.
that one.
You've 2 proposed for the.
Proposed for the fall,
following
for
year.
that to happen
Okay.
in the fall,
Yeah.
yeah.
And those are people moving, or those would be tuition paid?
Those are people moving into district
Okay.
who
But
have
they're not.
Not yet.
obtained a certificate of occupancy.
Right.
Okay, that was the only question I had.
So
on
there's
that.
for those type of situations, there's nowhere to get funding for those students because the funding is still in their residency, their town of residency, I should say, for those students.
Correct.
Yeah, so. And then moving on to then the second policy item up for tonight. Oh, yeah,
still had a
sorry.
question on the residency
Go
requirement.
first.
Was there any conversation, or has there been any conversation about clarifying what residing in the district means? Like,
I think it was
I'm
kind
a
of in
divorced
there.
household, right? My daughter sleeps at her dad's house 1 night a week. Clearly, she's a Westford resident, right? But about it being like a primary household or something that specifies situations where kids may be living in multiple households, that we require them to be living in Westford more than they're living in another location? Or do we not?
The state
I don't know what to say,
regulations-
care
Yeah.
getting more granular, like, is there not in our purview to get more granular to say primary household versus?
The state regulations define what that looks like,
Yeah.
and in some cases that get
think it's
very,
in
very
there.
challenging, we do need to establish where that student's civic life is their primary focus in order to figure out if they should be in Westford or in the other town. But basically, if a divorced mother and father or
Whatever the
parents,
situation, grandparent, whatever.
yeah, it shouldn't be grandparent unless they are the legal
Custodial,
guardian.
yeah.
Yeah.
Custodial. So you look at the legal custody, it's a little bit different for each one, and that's why we have to have the probate orders when we do have a situation such as that. But if it's a 50-50, then students can enroll in either one of
Either
those
district.
schools.
So I guess the second question I had was like, there's no like follow-up, right? Like, I moved into Westford in kindergarten, I enrolled my kid. How do you know 6 years later, 10 years later, that like she still really does live here, right? That I haven't moved and I'm using, like,
Well, we do have follow- we
in
do-
various conversations, you hear chatter about people that
We do have
may or may not really live in town or are using grandparent addresses. So I was just kind of curious, since this policy came up, like, obviously we can't police 4,500 students, right?
But if
And-
there's a report of it,
We
I
look
can
into
speak of another district, I can't speak of what Westford does, but there are cases of police investigation of whether or not they actually live.
So someone would have to like, hey, I heard.
And we have that.
We have an anonymous tip line.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We do, and we do follow up on that. But the first thing is like for people, if they're renting, every single year they have to.
Yeah,
they
that
have to-
one's,
they have to-
that was clear.
and-
That
that's-
was
Right,
the
so
updated
that, so
one.
that's, but it's a question of if we, and we do have people who will report concerns about fraudulent use of addresses, and we investigate it. And sometimes we then end up with the
Something
appropriate
else.
documentation to prove that the person is there, and sometimes you find out that those people shouldn't be part of Western Public Schools, and then they leave.
I feel like it's a really tough conversation, but like every dollar counts right now. And so it's like, if they are coming, if there's somebody that doesn't necessarily primarily live in the residence that they are being registered through the school system to, then we should be able to go to their town of choice, through our non-school choice policy that ties in here to say, like, this
Well,
child
we
is going to
can't,
school in
yeah,
our
we can't go to
district.
their town and make their town pay us.
Yeah.
We can't do,
Or
we can't do that.
Whoever we're charging
we-
the tuition to.
Well, no, but we tell them that they have to unenroll and they have to
We
go
go
to the
back to
town
their-
where they
to
reside.
their home
They have to,
school.
they have to prove to us that they've enrolled in the town where they reside. Yep.
And if someone were to purchase your home, and a family moves in and they enroll their students, then we have,
Yeah, there's going to be an overlapping.
with our student database, we realize that there's another family that's purchasing a bus pass or something like that. So there are a couple different checks and balances along the way.
Makes sense.
Thank you. Oh, I'm just curious.
So then, moving on to the other policies, which is the field trip policy, P5404, P6120, and then the tuition fees, P3404. Those are going up for first readings this evening, so I'm going to make a motion to move the readings, the first readings of those.
So moved.
Thanks, Bill. Is there a
Second.
Thanks, Larry. All in favor? There we go. Okay, so the tuition fees, maybe I'll talk about first, just to clarify. That should have actually gone with the other two policies, the last reading for the reading, because they're all kind of linked. Again, the tuition fees policy is really just to clarify some of the language in terms of how we're charging the tuition fees. It's not actually changing any practice or anything. It's just kind of trying to give some clarity to the language to current practice. And so that's the tuition fees. The field trip policy, P5404 and P6120, there's two things to this. One, you'll notice P6120 is all redlined in an effort to create some sort of
Consolidation.
consolidation.
Look at the leading the finance
I
subcommittee
know, we
did.
started that
We had
consolidation.
this
So
red
great.
line months ago.
I beat you to it.
But the field trip policy then is trying to encapsulate a bit more. I will say, Courtney did share it with so the legal counsel, and they did give us, because actually, I suppose the original field trip policy had been written a number of years ago, and there was quite a lot of language in it actually that was more procedural than policy focused, that kind of higher overview. So we took about 98% of their suggestions in terms of language, but there was just kind of 2 points that we felt that maybe should still stay in the policy. One on the policy was it had that school committee approving the policy, lived in the procedures, but our policy subcommittee discussed it and we're like, well, the policies typically kind of guide everybody, and it also outlines specifically what school committee's role is in those. And so we felt that still keeping that language in the policy itself, which outlined, no, school committee oversees or approves overnight, out of state and foreign trips, still felt to us that it should live there as opposed to just in the procedures. And then the one other thing that we've added in is just to kind of look at adding some clarifying language around how we're supporting students with disabilities when we are planning trips. And we tried to do it high level because we know that really comes into procedural, so that there's a baseline for all families, staff, students, kind of when we're organising class trips or field trips, kind of understanding what the expectations are as a district, and figuring out, I suppose, what's not necessarily adding to anyone's plate, but maybe we just make it as part of the.
Yeah, I will say I have a concern with that language.
Okay.
Again, I have no problem arguing with lawyers. I'm married to one. However,
Yeah.
When the language as written right now,
Yep.
I think would potentially prohibit many of the field trips that you've already approved
Okay.
and future field trips. For example, if you're saying, the language says that the district would be responsible for all of the accommodations, including accessible transportation and any supports that a student might need, and if the district is taking all of that ownership on, then we would really probably be looking at a position where students could most likely only go on trips where they could access a coach bus, potentially, for the district to be able to pay for something like that, because costs for special flights we wouldn't be able to support that. So therefore, you see what I'm saying? So like once you say that the district is responsible for all of that, then that means there are field trips that we could not afford to send our students on. And many of them were all of the international trips that were already approved. So I think that language, we have to be careful about the spirit of having it. I totally understand that we're committing, but that's true of all field trips, right?
Yeah.
That's why I think the lawyers were suggesting that you don't put that specifically in a policy, because that burdens the district with the full cost of that trip. And I think we, as a district, we wouldn't be able to afford that. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
And I would say that the trips you're talking about are typically family paid. Right, so the kids are going to Belize and they're going to France. Those costs are already.
Right. But the reading of the language, the way that I'm reading.
I'm agreeing with you.
It's saying that all
These
trips.
kids. So in some ways, someone could argue there's some reverse discrimination there, right? That those students with disabilities would have to be paid for the district, where the other students would be paid for by their families. So I think
the distinction, though, with this, and maybe, we do put in some clarifying language, is that we're talking about field trips and class trips. And I suppose when we think about those, like the big ones that we proposed tonight, to China, to Arizona, that's bringing in flights, those kind of really live as foreign trips, and that they're kind of
But we approved it as
extracurricular.
a field trip today. So
That's why I
so
think
that's
the
why-
lawyers are like, having a higher level policy that talks about your supportive trips makes a lot of sense. But once you get into the details that says that we would be paying for all trips, it's hard to distinguish them unless you are getting even more into those procedural pieces of the
can it
policy.
be changed to being school-funded trips? Like, if it is a school-funded trip, then the district would be responsible
class
for
trip wouldn't be
accommodating. So like, the sixth graders went last year to Christmas Carol. Well, and that was, I guess we still paid for it technically as part of the field trip cost, but.
My feeling is that if the committee can determine what the purpose for wanting that in, and if that lives then in a procedure but not in the policy, so that it can still be clearly dictated, but it doesn't prohibit.
I think the spirit would be that all trips need to be accessible to all students, right?
Could we
Yeah.
take out the financial piece of this paragraph, where it's they should ensure the students have access? Is that reasonable still? No?
I'm gonna go with the fact that we actually gave this to the lawyers, and the lawyers already gave us their opinion. So
Okay.
I'm
I didn't
encouraging
see
you
that.
I'm encouraging you to follow the lawyer's
But
opinion.
how do we
Well, I will
stomach?
also say, I did share this with the special education lawyer, and they thought this language was perfectly
Well, of
fine,
course,
being in the
yes.
policy.
But it wasn't our special
It was,
education lawyer.
no, it wasn't.
But I think that the undertone of accepting our district lawyer's recommendation is to say we are actively excluding some students from trips, and I don't know how we stomach
Yeah.
that. So I
Right.
think the committee's looking for a way to not be saying that to our students.
And really
Right.
what we're trying to say is when we're planning whatever trip it is that we're at least keeping who's the students potentially going on this trip and what are the planning and costs involved in it. And that there is a legal onus on the district to, financially, make those accommodations if we're
Right, but
doing those trips.
but-
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Then we don't, when it becomes then cost prohibitive, we can't do it.
Yeah.
And that's my point,
Yeah.
is that you've actually you're creating a different scenario where you're now saying, okay, well,
We
we're not
can't
gonna have that trip at all.
But we're
if we
not
can't
creating
afford
a that already exists, though. Not that we say we don't have the trip, we just say we have the trip without the student. That's the situation that already exists.
Like the foreign
It's just been
trips.
brought to light. I mean,
Yeah.
It's true.
But I think
Yeah.
there are a lot of students that aren't going on those foreign trips either,
Yeah.
right? And are excluded because I don't speak Spanish, or I know it's not a baseline requirement, right? But they're excluding themselves for certain reasons.
Yeah.
Again, I'm not on the subcommittee, so I didn't see what the lawyer's recommendations are. Like, can we go back to the lawyer and say, can you come up with language that is more inclusive to the accommodations that doesn't touch about the financial, like, can we request the lawyer to come back with slightly more inclusive language, or?
Well, what the lawyer gave to us is what the MASC recommends.
Right.
But it doesn't,
And-
it doesn't really mention
And
any
then,
of it.
from that point, recommended that we as a district can come up with our own procedures. And that we would just want to make sure that all the leadership has some kind of input in it. But the procedures could clearly say anything that is being highlighted here tonight in this
Yeah.
discussion. But from the lawyer's perspective, they're recommending alignment with the MASC policies.
So the MASC policy, though, is actually really short, and when you go into the MASC policy, it kind of says there's other things you can add on or interject, but they actually don't give a comprehensive thing because they know it's kind of different to every district. It was more that we're trying to capture the spirit of, and I think the thing is, procedures can change, and I think this is more, for the policy was to try and capture the spirit of it on a school committee, that this is what we're stating, that this is what we're behind, this is what we believe, and to just kind of make sure that there's clarity, through the procedures and stuff. I mean, but there is a financial responsibility to us for these students with various field trips and class trips. So it's not like, I think legally somebody could still bring the question to us tomorrow about, well, I want to go on the trip to Arizona. What are the legal things? So it's not like it's changing our legal obligation. Like that paragraph is really
Can I-
rooted in the law.
Can I ask a opinion question here on legal? Is there a distinction between an educational field trip as opposed to an experiential field trip when it comes to the district's obligation?
That's a good
I think
question.
there can be. This is my concern, is that the law is pretty clear. You're creating a policy that's actually becoming, I think, more restrictive than what the law is saying.
It shouldn't be,
Right.
because it's supposed to
But
be
it-
based on the
but-
law, so we can fix that.
But there is a
tweak that
difference
later.
between you as a committee approving various trips at any given time And then if someone decides, we know that we've always said that if students can't participate for financial reasons, that they will find ways to support that. There are a lot of ways. I mean, I am also a huge proponent of public schools, hate the fact that we have fees, hate the fact that we ask people to pay for anything. So I want to say that publicly, right? But we know that Westford students do have a lot of opportunities that other districts don't necessarily have, because a lot of, not all, but a lot of families are also able to either support it, or they do fundraising for it, okay? But that again is a private source. So like all of those things could happen, but this is saying that the district will pay that cost. And that's where I feel like you've seen our budget, and we don't have a special education line item for field trips.
Right. So my question though was, if a field trip is identified as supporting the educational outcome of a specific class, is that different than we're going to Canopy Lake as a class?
No, because it's a class trip.
Well, we had
I'm
a
just
distinction.
wondering.
We had a distinction in the policy at one point, and the
Right.
lawyer took it out, so.
So,
I feel like you can try to.
I'm just
But
asking.
the
so-
problem is that then you're complicating things, as opposed to, that kind of goes back to like the procedure piece, which I think is why
I think-
lawyers are encouraging you to be
In
more
the-
simple than
Yeah.
more specific.
And the liability is the liability, regardless
doesn't
of
change,
if it's a field
exactly.
trip, a class trip, an experiment, a bonding trip, whatever it might be. If it's Westford Public Schools, that's putting out the,
That
putting
was
out
my
the
question.
offer and
Right.
providing all that opportunity,
Yeah.
then,
That was my question, is whether or not 504 still applies if it's Canopy Lake as opposed to
Absolutely.
Museum of Science.
Yes.
Right.
But I think the
So,
other thing
just, okay.
I think I suppose the spirit of what we were also trying to kind of outline is just that, say, for example, we need to get a specific type of bus or something for transportation. The extra cost of hiring that specific bus has to be paid for by the district. It can't actually be put back on, you can't divide it up across, well, there's 100 students going, so we'll just divide the total cost by the 100. Because that's putting a financial responsibility on the other students. And so that's what I suppose we were also trying to clarify, that it's that extra piece. is
And I
the
think that's
liability.
where
I
Dr.
think
Chu
it-
is coming to.
It actually,
we can't pay
but
for it,
that's something that could be debated, right? Because if you've designed a trip, universal design, and you have looked what we asked our senior class to do last year, who wanted to do a trip. From the very beginning, we said you need to think about the possibility of being able to meet the needs of everybody in your class, not individuals, but think about that. So you design something in advance that has all of these features, that you have transportation. You, from the beginning, think in terms of, I'm going to engage with a bus company that has coach buses that are easily accessible for all people. Then yes, the cost of all those coach buses should be spread across all of the students, because that's the way all of the students are getting there. If you were getting one specific specialized van,
Yeah.
and then making everybody pay for that van, that would be inappropriate. But what we've been saying is, and we've been talking about this with our leadership team for a while, and we've been talking about trickle down to make sure that all the advisors understand, but I know the principals and the assistant principals all understand, is that notion of you're planning in advance. And that's where I think that cost for everybody to go to this specific hotel where everything is accessible, the cost of going to that hotel is going to be shared by everybody. Does that make sense? How I think
No,
that's where
I
it's different than
understand.
what, because I know what you're saying and I
'Cause
agree
what
with
we're
you,
saying
but I
is,
think
yeah.
there's a different point when if you've planned appropriately from the beginning and you've made it accessible for everybody, then whatever that cost is, if the students are paying for it at all, right? Because there are some things that we do where we are paying for it.
Is that the same theory of the sixth graders all go to Christmas Carol and you need a specialized van to transport one of those students? That's still in the totality of the cost for all students to go together.
And what we're trying to get away from is what I mean, again, you want the experience to be as similar for everybody in the first place, right? So
Yep.
the idea is like, are we really thinking in advance? We'll just use this for example, right? Maybe a child does use different transportation to come to school every single day, but that's not necessary for them to go on a field trip. Right?
It
But
depends on the
sometimes
individual
people weren't
needs.
thinking that way. They were just assuming, well, this person uses this
Yeah.
specialized transportation.
There
and
will
they
be a
weren't real-
subset of kids that might, like if
Might,
you have somebody
right,
that's in a
right.
wheelchair, or something where they can't use standard transportation, but.
But again, that
We want to make
should
sure that
be
everybody
accounted
is
for.
planning for everybody from the beginning. Which again, speaks to the spirit
Yeah.
of the language, which I get.
Yeah.
I'm concerned about identifying the way that it does the financial obligation of the district.
Yeah.
I think you'll find yourself looking at trips that you'll have to say, we can't support that because the district would not be able to pay for that. And therefore, that means that trip doesn't happen.
I think this is actually kind of this whole conversation kind of captures what's been happening in the district on and off. I've heard, here and there in over the years, is that I think there is a kind of a gray area almost of like trying to understand exactly what this means so that parents understand exactly, staff understand, administration understand, and I think that's what we're trying to capture is there a way to create a policy/procedures that makes this black and white for people to understand. So everybody starts the planning process on the same baseline. And I think that's what we're trying to capture. We will absolutely go back and have a look at that language and try and simplify it. It really is the spirit, I think, of what we're trying to capture.
I really do think there's I'm trying to figure out how to not. We have, kind of mandatory field trips, right? The entire class is going, everybody has an invite, and then there are more elective-based trips. And so I think I can see a case for the entire fifth grade is going, the entire seventh grade is going, the entire, that if there were some additional costs incurred to make sure it was accessible, that there could be either a responsibility for that to be baked into the total plan or, a district responsibility. But I do have a hard time a little bit with the elective, like a more
and that's
elective.
what this isn't supposed to,
But
but I
don't-
see how the language
The
you're reading
language
it,
is
we can
not
totally-
clear
Yeah.
in that sense. Like, to me, I read this and say, we have a student that wants to go to Belize, and it would cost an additional $15,000 to make sure that they were accessible to go, and the district is responsible for that in order to make it accessible. And while that would be amazing if we had the ability to do that for all students, but also, I'm not sure we're not probably paying any need-based for kids to go to Belize, because then every potential student could come and say, well, I would like to go to Belize, but I can't afford it, right? So there has to be some certain guardrails on these elective type field trips about where the district responsibility would lie.
Yeah. I think the understanding, the spirit of it was supposed to be kind of those trips that are occurring during class time. Essentially the class trips and the field trips which occur during class time, as opposed to the foreign trips which happen in April or vacation or over the summer. I think that was kind of the spirit, but we can
I think to
absolutely.
Tom's point, we called those field trips, and that's what the policy is calling it.
Yeah.
Right, so we just
Well,
have to.
I think that's the thing we've
We're
got to-
trying to be more inclusive, and we need to find the language
Yeah,
that.
we can totally add in some definitions to clarify that and figure it out. Okay, perfect. This is the whole point of doing these
discussion.
things. Val, you want to keep your update to 1 minute?
We've done a lot of really good work in the last couple weeks. It's
Years
felt like
too.
years, maybe.
It has been years, actually, at this point.
Yeah. We're, starting to touch on the educational visioning, which is really fun. What is the consultant, I think, used a couple words like space is the third teacher. So it just really kind of idealistic ways to think about how to inform the space design.
6 to 7. 6 to 7.
6, 7.
6 to
No,
7
that's
on
Val's
the
joke.
Yes.
on the next meeting.
Yes,
That's kind of what
so,
we're doing.
so that was a group of like 30 people in a room, but we're opening that up to the community. So next Monday, in this room and on Zoom, we will have the education consultant come and guide us through a little bit of that work that happened. But most importantly, I think for families is it will be a chance to weigh in on some of the big decision points of this project, which is should this project be K to 2 and 3 to 5? Like, should we continue that model, or should we option to a K to 5 model? Should preschool stay in neighborhood elementary schools or kind of go back to a centralized model? And what, you all know this, but we have those 3 different enrollment sizes, kind of a small, medium, large. What are the trade-offs of those different sizes? Is there one or something, is there a preference in the community? So we're gonna have like an in-person workshop aspect to that. If you can join us in person from 6 to 7 on next Monday, June 1st. But we're also gonna have like a little focus group on Zoom for it, and there will be a Mentimeter portion of that so that everyone who is logged in will have a way to share a voice. It wasn't a minute, but.
Close.
We got 2. There we go. Motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second. All in favor?